Good evening. Hello. Hello. Good evening, everyone. If I can get you to all take a seat, we're going to call the meeting to order. Thank you. Thank you. I'll ask the city clerk to do roll call vote, please. Roll call quorum. Thank you.
Councilmember Barton. Here. Councilmember Edwards. Here. Councilmember Landrum.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
And Mayor Wixom.
Here. This is throwing me off. We're in a different room and out of sorts. So with that, we're going to call the meeting to order. We have a goal setting workshop tonight, and Jeanette Williams is here somewhere down there, and she is going to be facilitating this, and we are going to open public comment. I'm going to ask for those of you who turn speaker slips in, we're going to hold those. We're going to have 2 public comment periods tonight. One right now for items on the agenda, and then the city clerk has your speaker slips. If you can't stay and want to speak now, that's fine. We're going to stop partway through the goal setting to allow everybody to engage them once we've begun the goal setting. So if anyone wants to speak, public comment on items on the agenda pertaining to the goal workshop tonight, please, 3 minutes, the city clerk will be timing. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff. Paul Donnelly, Morro Bay. I just wanted to say about the agenda as far as the goals, that I hope that you would consider them as something that's not so lofty and unattainable or affordable. You should actually find a way to stretch your dollar as far as it possibly could, get the biggest bang for the buck for what little we have. And also to consider that sometimes goals can be detrimental. For instance, when we were looking for a site to put the new wastewater treatment plant, we were looking at Rancho Colina, and it was the goals that prevented us from going there, and it ended up costing us tens of millions of dollars more to end up where we ended up. So just keep that in mind, that your goals need to actually be achievable. Some of these things that we've done in the past have sat on the shelf. I don't know if you remember back when Councilmember Ben Luna had his Destination 2000. I don't know whatever became of that, but it's nice to have these things, but they have to be something that can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's David Nelson. I've lived here about half my life, and I'm afraid I don't know all of you people, and I should, but COVID kept us away. But I certainly had lots of thoughts before COVID, and being locked up and thinking about it, I had a lot more. Lots of things happened in those 2 years that citizens had no input in. And so I just want to reflect back a little bit. One thing, the overruns on our sewer plant are just outrageous. And as a citizen was told somewhere back around 126 million, and it's up to 170 some million with numerous changes in the plan. I'd like to see a forensic audit. I mean, you cost the taxpayers $70 million. I mean, we were told one figure and everybody knew it was going to be the other figure. I did anyway. My circle of friends certainly would have bet on it. So I'm a little upset about it, but I'm glad I'm getting it off my chest because we have new people and we have opportunities in Morro Bay. And it's not a battery. It's not a battery containment building, you know. And somebody needs to explain to the citizens, because I've talked to them too. We're going to clean up water, and then we're going to inject it into the power plant grounds. Excuse me, there's toxic waste there. You can't put water under a power plant It's nuts. They have it environmentally sound for a power plant. We shouldn't be dumping water. I wish somebody could explain that. And a forensic audit would come around to figure that out, because that's not the plan that Morro Bay had when we started having public meetings. Cayuga spent $35 million to get all that we needed. We're paying for state water. We're spending billions of dollars as a state to collect water so they can deliver it to us. We're already paying for this. And then we bought a water reclamation plant under the guise of low interest loans. This is insane. You guys are going to put up with this. You didn't do it, but we all live with it. I mean, our sewer bills are up $200 a month. A lot of people can't do it. I'm lucky I'm retired and it's not killing me, but come on, this is what you got. You got a big mess, and a forensic audit will show you what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anyone else? With that, AGP, do we have anyone in the queue?
We do not have anyone in the queue at the moment.
Thank you very much. With that, I will close public comment and bring it back to council. And I'm going to turn it over at this point to Jeanette Williams.
Welcome everyone this evening. My name is Jeanette Williams. I'm with the Center for Organizational Effectiveness. And this evening is going to be a very lively one. I can already sense it in the room. So I appreciate everyone's participation as we go through this process together. I'm going to turn it over to Interim City Manager Greg Carpenter, who's going to be talking about the financials. Is that correct? Is that good for right now? And just talk about some of the things that we've created and why it's important. Goal setting, and I appreciate it was Tom, correct? That our goals that we set today are for the future. And that's the difference between current state and future state. So if we think about our future's future, there's a Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And to David's point, we need to think about the choices that we make today, because those are the choices that are going to show up in the future. So I'm going to turn it over to the interim city manager to kind of share about why this is important in terms of goals and so on and so forth. And then we'll get into the goal setting itself.
Thanks, Jeanette. I haven't met most of you. My name is Greg Carpenter. I'm the interim city manager. I'll be here for the next 2 to 3, 4 months while the city goes through a recruitment process to find a new city manager for the city. I was asked to sort of frame the conversation. It's important to understand what the available resources are. And your resources are your city staff, and they're also obviously your financial resources. So staff has prepared a 10-year financial forecast, which is a little unique. Usually we do 3 or 5 years because you really kind of have a better understanding of what your expenses are going to be and what your revenues are going to be for a couple of years out. 10 years, it's really more about sort of looking at trends because there are a number of assumptions, and we'll show you some detail on what those assumptions are in a moment. But there's lots of assumptions, there's lots of variables, a lot can happen in 10 years, but staff has done their best to research and talk with our financial advisors and put 10-year revenues and expenses together. So I'll just, as a lead in, I think you're going to see that the city is pretty constrained. The revenues and expenses are somewhat balanced for the next couple of years. We'll show you a chart in a moment, but in about year 3, they start to become unbalanced, meaning our revenues are projected to be lower than our ongoing expenses on the operations side. The other part of looking at your expenses is what is it that the city needs to spend each year in infrastructure, taking care of your streets, your buildings, your roads, and your harbor. And Measure Q and E help to a certain extent in that area, but as you'll see, the needs are pretty large in the future with respect to your infrastructure costs. Okay, so the first slide, and I know that this might be a little hard to read. There are printed versions of the presentation on the table at the entrance. But as I said, you can see that our revenues and our expenses for just operations are fairly balanced this year and the next couple of years, but about year 3, they start to depart. And then going out over the next 10 years, that gap is about $1 million a year. So the challenge for the city really is to find a way to increase its ongoing revenues to match those ongoing expenses. And the assumptions going into this are that we're holding our staffing levels constant, meaning we're not adding new employees, new positions rather, to the city organization, which is in itself a challenge because you have a very small city staff that does a lot. I think every department probably could do more with more resources, but this, for the purpose of this exercise, we're showing no new positions in the city. We have the next one. This is the Measure Q and E fund forecast. And because we currently use these funds for both infrastructure at about $1.5 million a year, and also for some public safety positions and staffing. Those costs are going to escalate over the next 10 years. The revenues from Q&E also will escalate. So this assumes that if we continue at the $1.5 million level, that the revenues and expenses in Q&E are fairly balanced. This shows the bottom 2 line sets are what you just saw. The top line set just combines all the revenues and all the expenses. And essentially it shows that if we look at it as one pot of money, we're balanced for about 3 years out, but then again, we start to become unbalanced in year 4. So these are the assumptions. This is probably easier to review on the paper version than on the screen, but you can see. We have assumptions with respect to property tax, sales tax, and TOT. The property tax information comes from San Luis Obispo County. The sales tax numbers come from our sales tax consultant, and then staff worked with our sales tax consultant, also with the Visitors Bureau on the transient occupancy tax projections. We do have a little bit over 100 hotel rooms coming on board in the next year, so we've accounted for that. You can see it helps the number out a bit. On the expense side, we're assuming increases in our largest expense is personnel. We're a service organization, so the service is provided by people. We have personnel expenses that include salaries, pension costs, benefit costs. Those are rising. This city, like almost every city in the state, has unfunded pension liability, meaning the pension fund that we use is underfunded to service its obligations for the former retirees from the city. And their way of fixing that is to charge all the cities a lot more money for the next 7 years so that it can become fully funded. And unfortunately, the pension fund is not meeting their income requirements or their forecasted investment returns. So this is a bit of a moving target for us. And then we have our other expenses. So again, these are assumptions going out 10 years. As we get into our budget planning in May, we'll provide very detailed forecasts for the next 3 years. Other considerations that go into the city's financial situation, the need for infrastructure. Right now, we're spending $1.5 million a year from Measure Q and E. And then if we have surplus at the end of fiscal years, we're targeting some of that money. Our pavement forecast indicated that we should be spending more like $2.8 million a year to maintain the roads in their current pavement condition, which means that over time, the condition of the city roads is actually getting worse from the starting point. We have major storm drain issues and damage with the recent storms. We have old public facilities, meaning the buildings. And we are preparing this year, we are preparing a capital needs assessment. So we'll know in greater detail how much we actually need to bring our facilities into a more serviceable condition. We do have reserves. The city has a reserve policy that accounts for 33% of prior year expenses. The general fund emergency reserve currently sits at $3.8 million. That's a little bit below the 33% because we used some dollars, I believe, at mid-year to address some needs. The general fund operating balance is at $6.5 million. The Measure E fund balance is at $2 million. So we do have reserves. We do need to use some of that operating balance to build the 33% reserve fund back. We also use part of that fund for our future pension obligations in our pension trust fund. We are still trying to determine the damage associated with the two major storm events, the January storm and the more recent storm. Right now, we're estimating it to be around $16 million. So I think that's going to be a major element of our strategic planning going forward is focusing on getting reimbursement for the expenses we've already put out, getting funds to repair things, and also asking for funds to mitigate or prevent future damage. It is a real constraint because staff is going to be focused on getting those funds and in making those repairs for probably the next couple of years. Whereas if we hadn't had those events, we'd be working on actually improving facilities that weren't damaged by the flooding and the storms. And then there's the unknowns. Is the country headed into a recession? Our sales tax, property tax, transient occupancy tax make up major components of our revenues. If there is an economic downturn, what happens to those funds? On the other hand, there are economic development opportunities potentially where we could see some improvement in our revenues. Those take time, so they don't, if something's proposed this year, we don't see the revenues until it's built and open and operating, whatever that may be. So those revenues often take time. And then, as I said, our pension fund, known as PERS, their rate of return is a bit of a moving target. When they underperform, they ask cities to actually increase their contribution. So we felt it was important to sort of frame what the city's financial position is going into strategic planning. As I said, we are in okay shape for the next couple of years, but I think the challenge really is going to be looking at those future years and looking at ways to increase revenues, contain or reduce costs, and build on the business and economic activity that's already here, and then look for other opportunities. All right.
Hello. I'd like to just take a moment to kind of transition because it's really hard sometimes for our brains when we think about all that we just heard. Can you hear me? Louder? I'm louder. David's giving me the eye. Sometimes it's hard to transition into how do we think divergent thinking or creative thinking when we've just given some information that kind of shares a little bit of challenges and constraints we may have. So we're going to do an exercise. I'm pleasantly surprised to see so many people here, but I didn't plan for all of you to be here, but we're going to make it fun and interactive as well. On the table, the staff and council has a bucket of water. a penny and an eyedropper. And so what they're going to do is they're going to get in groups, and I'll give you instructions. It's right up here in front. You'll see them in the front of your table. And what we're going to do is amongst yourselves in your little groups, so whoever wants to pair up in 2s or 3s, what you're going to do is you're going to, before we do the exercise itself, I want you to think to yourself how many drops of water will go on the penny before it goes over. Okay, so I want you to think about that, and then you'll give me a number first when you're ready. So talk about it. How many drops? And a drop is literally a drop of water out of the eyedropper. It's not the full dropper. So think about a drop. Think about a drop. And then for the public, I'd love for you to talk amongst yourself. How many do you think? So while they're thinking in their pods, how many? And no testing, no practicing. It could go either one, heads or tails, because it's an equal value. Heads or tails, you choose. So what do you think? Is there thoughts that you have out here about how many drops of water before it loops over? Have them hold up the dropper. No, how many drops? Oh, you want to see the dropper? For qualification, this is what a dropper looks like, and a drop of water would come out. So do we have any numbers? You think 5? Okay, 5, 25, 9, okay, 6, 20, okay. Got some good numbers. 10. Okay, so I'm gonna go around the room. I'm gonna go around the horn here. For those that are joining us via Zoom, we want to make sure that they can be part of this as well. So what was your number of things that you think? So we have 20 here. So those that were in the 20 range. How many are you thinking here? What is your number? 15. So we have 20, 15. How many do you think? Are you doing it? Not yet. How many? 8. How many are you thinking? 8, not yet. Don't go yet. How many do you have? Hold on. How many first? How many did you say that it's going to take? 10, 8. So we have between 8, 10, all the way up to 20. And we have some big numbers out here as well. So go ahead, 15. So go ahead and one person will count. The other person will do the drop. And if you're by yourself, that's fine. You can do both. And count the number of water drops on the penny. Yeah, so you put the drops on the penny until it drops over. That's okay. Not yet. I'm telling you, this is good. This is good experience for you to see what we got going on up here. So is there anything out here that you think more drops on the tail than the head? Absolutely. More on the tails, more on the heads, okay? Okay, are you ready? Oh, not yet. Okay. So are we ready to report out? Okay, I think we are. If we can have just a little bit quiet, I love that. I love the conversations. So this group here had 20. They anticipated 20. And how many did you have? 37. Okay.
Too large of drops or something.
Okay, we had 2 larger drops here. What was your number? Okay, they said 8, and they had 34 drops. Okay. Terry. What did you have? Okay, so we had 8 and then we had 18. But you said 10 and they had 28. 24. And so what I just want to share with you is sometimes our limitations or the constraints that we already put on something. And as we go through this goal setting together, it's important that all of us work together. The problems that we have to solve today cannot be solved with the same logic that has gotten us here. And that means it's going to take the collective wisdom of everyone in the room and those that are joining us via Zoom. And those that are out this evening having dinner and didn't get to make it here, but you're going to go back and share with them the importance of the collective wisdom in order for us to take where we are today into where we want it to go. And I think it's important to know that there's a lot of things that are beyond our ability, or it's being imposed of us from a bigger system, but we have to figure out collectively how we want to work together. Does that sound like a good plan for this evening? Okay, so that being said, I'm going to share, I want to just walk with you a journey of how we kind of came up with today's slide, like how we're kind of progressing in that kind of the goals that we want to go. And Tom, I really appreciate some of the things that come up about goal setting. Like I said, it's current state, where we are, future state, where do we want to go? And the idea is that we create a frictionless path to get that done and not have constraints on top of constraints with our goals. So if you can see up here on the screen, and as well as in your packet, these are the goals from 2022, that was discussed. And these are so if you look at the very left side, those are the goals that were spoken of and it came about from council. And then the goal statements are actually, you can also think of them as objectives. These are the various things by which we were saying, these are the steps, or this is how we're going to get it done. And so this was the 2022 goals and goal statements that you might have been familiar with. And as we looked at this and we thought about the future's future and what this council wants to achieve over the next 2 years, we started thinking about, do these still apply? And if so, to what degree? And so, so this is what we found, is that out of those 5, we found that there was, I asked the top 3, and just know that these top 3, they go in columns, if you will. And so public infrastructure was the top 3 out of 5. And then you saw fiscal sustainability and economic vitality. And then if you look at the next row down, housing was another main priority, as well as transparency, homelessness, housing, and transparency. So looking at these top 3 goals, we went back to the 2022 goals. We looked at the survey that we were able to gather from the community. So if you did fill out that survey, thank you. And in the future, when we do those, your voice is important because it funnels into goal setting and objectives. So looking at this, we were able to say, because I'm going to go back to that word transparency, it's in bright yellow. One of the things I think David brought up is where did things go? Where's the progress report? Where did we not see this as a community? And oftentimes, and this council, I want to applaud them on, is super sensitive to that. And so these are some of the themes that really came up when we were thinking about the transparency part. And it kind of rolled into this. It's not just about transparency, because we can say we're transparent, but how do we demonstrate that? And so we looked at transparency from all these various facets, but then we thought about communication, not just communication from one way, but both way communication, that collective wisdom. And another component that was important was education. There are so many constraints from a government agency on the way that they can purchase things, or how they have to go about bidding, that a lot of times, if you're just an individual purchaser or a customer, sometimes we don't understand some of the bureaucracy that has to go through. So it's all these various things that we want to be open to, be transparent, open for good communication, good dialogue, and then more importantly, open to educate. So that way we all are educated on all of the various rules and laws and things that maybe shape the way we think until we understand and be educated by it. So I'll pause there for a moment. I know I'm not allowed to ask for public comments, but I just want to pause for a moment to see if there's anything that I'm missing that needs to be shared. Okay. So like I said, when we were looking at the goals, we found that out of the 5, the top 3 were definitely important for us to carry over. And so those are the public infrastructure, fiscal sustainability and economic vitality, and housing. The other 2 was climate action, and it's not that climate action is not important. It's part of how we're thinking about the future's future. not necessarily a goal out on itself. And then what we had was community health was really wrapped around the things that were going on when COVID was here. I'm not saying COVID's not here. I'm just saying it's to a lesser degree than when it was when this goal was set in place. So that being said, I want to bring us to where we think we need to forge a path. And this is where it's important because every one of you is a data point. And the idea is that we are able to hear from you as well as a council to be able to come up with how do we want to, if we're thinking these are our 4 top goals, what are the objectives or the goal statements that we think is important under those? And this allows for each of you to be able to share. There's going to be another exercise that allows you to do it as well. So this isn't if you don't speak now, there's another opportunity. So if you're one of those that like to think things through, you feel free to think it through before you share. So that being said, I want to go ahead and open up for public comment.
Thank you. So at this point, we're going to pause where we're at for our goals and invite you up for public comment. I would remind you again, 3 minutes, please. And I can start with the speaker slips. I feel like it's a secret ballot coming down. The first one up is Aaron Oakes, followed by Jim Crenault. Sorry if I said that wrong.
Good afternoon, members of the council and staff, and thank you, Jeanette, for hosting this goal-setting workshop. My name is Aaron Oakes, Morro Bay, and I just have a couple of things I just wanted to emphasize, which is there are a lot of challenges before us with regard to a lot of the expenditures going to be outweighing the revenues the next couple of years. So we got to start setting some goals right away within the next 3 years. And one of the things I want to talk about, the first thing is I want to talk about economic development. And part of that is I think we need to have a JPA style, collaborative meeting with the Morro Bay Chamber and the Government Affairs Committee with the Chamber to really go over some of these solutions. Yeah, I know the Chamber had done a lot of SurveyMonkey surveys that they sent to the community, and I haven't really seen the results of those. And I would like to bring those back to the public for discussion with a joint alliance meeting with the City Council and the Chamber. I think that would be very productive. And one of the solutions to that I would propose is looking at a potential third commercial cannabis operation permit to help with the revenue. I think we have some of the zoning that's available to explore that possibility. And so the next thing I wanted to talk about also is when it comes to planning infrastructure and major development, especially when we're looking at harbor improvements and a lot of activity that happens within our jurisdiction in the water. And so one of the things I want to focus on is the commercial fishing industry. I think they've been ignored, severely ignored for the past 50 years. And I think they need to have a seat at the table. And I think there needs to be a more fortified movement to bring them forth and to get their concerns, because the fishermen that I've spoken to for the past 10 to 12 years, they're saying they're not getting the representation that they feel that they need and deserve. I watched the video Winds of Change that's available on Vimeo. I hope you guys were able to watch it. It was very compelling, powerful, moving testimony. And I think we really should bring the commercial fishing industry back to the forefront. And lastly, I want to talk about sort of adjusting the master plan and adjusting it so that we don't include any changes to the zoning and on the Embarcadero infrastructure to modify it to anything like light industrial use, because that will create a lot of problems in the surrounding area, especially when we're talking about things like the proposed battery storage system. I think that's a problem. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is Jim Curnett. Hello to the council and city staff. I'm here on behalf of CAL, Citizens for Affordable Living, and we would like the City Council to consider the following to be included in the goals for the coming years. An expert in street repair maintenance recently reported that our streets require more than $2 million a year to maintain them. This figure doesn't include any funds for improvement. Cal requests that council set a goal of spending more than $2 million in the coming year to improve our rundown streets. Number two, discontinue the recycling component of the wharf project. Rather, make full use of the state water project, our cheapest and best source of water. Furthermore, this valuable resource should not be sold to other municipalities. Three, Cal requests council examine the city's involvement in the wind farm and pass a resolution opposing the offshore windmills based on the negative impact to not only our fishing industry, but our tourist industry, as well as the adverse effect on the local wildlife and wildlife habitat. Furthermore, we request this resolution contain language that Morro Bay would not provide support nor infrastructure for the wind farm. Cal requests council revisit the issue of increasing the building height in our downtown commercial area and change the zoning back to the maximum building height of 30 feet. This surely would help maintain our quaint fishing village atmosphere instead of emulating other cities in our county having a commercial look. And number five, Cal requests that the city council set a goal to revisit the general reserve requirement and maintain it at 25% as in years gone by. This would provide increased capital for street improvement, repair of bike paths, and construction of sorely needed city sidewalks. These are our top 5 goals for the coming year. Thank you very much.
Next, Sharice Hanson, followed by Jamie Irons.
Hello, thanks for having me. My name is Sharice Hanson. I'm a business owner on the Embarcadero, 24 years, 3 teenage boys who I hope to have grow up here and live here. I'm here tonight to talk about a particular goal that is near and dear to my heart. That is to update the waterfront master plan. It's over 40 years old since it's been edited in any way. With so many new businesses and revenue possibilities coming up on the Embarcadero and near the Rock, it's important to have an updated waterfront master plan. It sets the table for investors throughout the entire Embarcadero and Tidelands properties to understand what is possible for their waterfront and what is their guidebook on how to get what they want, because they know that we want it. It is a built-in RFP, request for proposal, for investors who want to come to the Tidelands area. It can say to investors, that's a repeat, isn't wanted. It opens up grant possibilities, knowing that the community has had the time and opportunity to contribute to the future concepts. A recent survey that I was on a webinar with Visit California did a poll of all of the coastal towns, and it was agreed that our beaches are the most attractive things to visit, both through tourists and the community itself. The beach at the Rock has more visitors, both tourists and locals, than any single business in Morro Bay. How do we pay for this? Well, Measure B failed, so property tax, residents don't want to pay for it. Businesses that are already contributing to the Harbor Fund are maxed out, and the cost of rent on the Embarcadero is the highest for about, anyway, it's the highest I've researched even to Santa Barbara. It's definitely higher than Higuera, which shouldn't be that way. So how do we pay for it? Parking. It's been one of the things that I've continuously thought about and asked and got feedback and researched And if we had a kiosk at Coleman and so they would collect money at the kiosk, there could be free parking all around, especially in the triangle lot with better signage. And the whole thing that we've done in the last couple of years is to try and get the person who uses it to pay for what they use. Funds would go to the beach, maintenance, safety, continue Harbor Walk to the jetty, improve Coleman Park. It could be $2 a day, 9 to 5, Saturday and Sunday year round, and then 7 days memorial to veterans with a $20 annual pass. I keep hearing Coastal will not allow it, but how can they not if it goes towards safety and maintenance of the water? Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Jamie Irons, Warren Bay. Thanks for holding the goal setting meeting. Pardon me. I have 4 items that I wanted to bring for discussion to include in goals. The Water Resource Center, infrastructure, homeless, and planning. The Water Resource Center, it was a bit of a surprise to see the sign Water Resource Center because I thought we started with a water reclamation facility. But after giving it some thought and consideration, it just makes sense. So I would say let's embrace and let's officially adopt the Water Resource Center by name, implement a mission statement, and pursue the full potential of Water Resource Center. As some of you may know, the city of Paso Robles has just approved a recycling water project, one that could carry recycled water to vineyards and parks. Isn't there a potential to deliver recycled water from the Water Resource Center to the Morro Bay Golf Course? That and groundwater recharge are goals I believe in for our city. Infrastructure. Recently, the City Council approved the CDBG grant of $100,000 for the ADA upgrade on Quintana and Main. Thank you for that. There was a past program using the CDBG grant funds called Fill in the Gap. The gap to fill were the sidewalks, primarily in the downtown and gaps connecting downtown to the waterfront. It was highly successful and popular. Lighting, the lighting of the trees in downtown have been very helpful, but at intersection crosswalk lighting, they're inadequate and if not dangerous in some areas. The example would be the intersection of Shasta and Morro Bay Boulevard. The tree canopy blocks the light, and though the canopy has been trimmed, extending a light fixture would be greatly improve the intersection at night. There are other locations that might work for replacing the fixture. A longer one, might enhance safety, et cetera. Striping. Striping is establish a striping program where through the budget process, the city will annually stripe some of our street intersections, crosswalks, and pathways. The example would be around the school crosswalks, downtown area, the waterfront. If we were to do this, some sort of program that was on an annual basis, basically you'd roll through and we'd have critical intersections and areas properly striped. I would think Measure Q could be a potential fund source for that. That might be controversial with some, but that's a one. And then finally, homeless. There's no one answer for homeless. Housing may be a subset of this homeless crisis. I would like for our community to discuss the homeless effects on our city and come up with one thing that we could take action on. We may not be able to build a 100-room homeless shelter tomorrow, but maybe we can implement a trash or hygiene program, whatever the simplicity of that, but it's worth a conversation. Planning, Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grants. This is one that hopefully is still around, but I would like to start there as far as, I'll just try to wrap it up. Shell Beach, Tascadero were recipients of the Complete Streets Planning Grant and were able to implement improvement measures following that. And I would just like us to pursue something like that, and pedestrian bike plan could qualify as well. Those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Pam Doherty and Cal Myers.
Mayor and council members, my name is Pam Doherty, and I've lived here for almost 6 years now. I feel very fortunate to call Morro Bay my home and to live in such a beautiful area of the Central Coast. That said, the Central Coast is one of the most expensive places to live in the country, as you know. And a key city goal should be affordable housing for those who live and work in our community, including updating the zoning code to increase the percentage of affordable housing required in our town and require low income levels for access to that housing. Secondly, and this is partly related to climate action, which I see as one of the top goals, but I think is also related to fiscal sustainability. There are so few beautiful and pristine coastal towns like Morro Bay left on our planet, and a key city goal should be to protect it. And that includes maintaining our marine protected area, National Estuary Program, and proposed area for the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, as well as protecting our local fishing industry. The city should carefully consider options for climate action planning efforts, including knowing when green energy is not really green, when new proposed projects such as the battery energy storage facility and offshore wind would be more detrimental than beneficial to our community. The dangers and environmental consequences of BESS and offshore wind outweigh their benefits. So related to this, a key city goal should include maintaining and protecting our harbor and Embarcadero with current zoning. This means not allowing the building of BESS or making significant changes to the harbor for large vessels to service an offshore wind farm. Safety and stewardship should come first. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cal Myers, citizen here in Morro Bay. I'm also a volunteer for the Harbor Advisory Board. I've been doing it for the last 2 years. My input for the goals, I'll start with this. What I've noticed over the last 2 years is I've been participating in city council meetings, listening in over Zoom and whatnot. It's very easy to speak passionately about a single topic. We hear some tonight, you see them in every council meeting. One thing I've learned in being part of the HAB is that things are interconnected. If you're against one thing, that impacts something else. And so I want to really emphasize that the waterfront master plan, to see how all those bits and pieces to protect the things that we cherish, to continue to get funding. There may be some extremely difficult choices that we have to make going forward. Morro Bay has been part of the energy grid for the last half century. What's that role going forward? Does Morro Bay as the mayor and city council have choices in that? We don't know. So again, that master plan would help us plan for those contingencies and look at all those various items. So I have kind of a passion for that, and that's why I did my volunteer work. Again, what should that plan look like? What should the harbor look like 10 years from now? Based on all the things that are changing in the environment. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Next up, Lee Johnson, followed by Heidi Bay.
Mayor and Council, my name is Lee Johnson, a resident of Morro Bay. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight about our future. First of all, the future that I would like for my son and his friends and for their children, their children's children, is to be able to afford to live and work in a vibrant, resilient, and thriving Morro Bay. I feel it is our responsibility to make the hard decisions today that will help ensure that future. Things like spending our reserves or forgoing recycled water may reduce cost now, but they increase cost and risks in the future. The hard decisions we need to make revolve around 3 key areas: increasing revenue, increasing housing stock, and enhancing key resources and infrastructure. As we saw tonight, if we want to keep services like fire and police, we need to increase revenue. There are also threats to our current revenues. Just think about how much tax revenue comes from our gas stations. What happens as more and more electric vehicles are on the roads? Given increasing costs and threats to our current revenues, we need to explore every option for increasing revenues. Wind, batteries, paid parking, everything should be on the table until they're fully investigated. Deciding our fate while we have options is better than saying no to everything and being left with nothing. Increasing our housing stock. We have a serious housing problem in Morro Bay. Our teachers, our workers, our families cannot afford to live here. Years of excuse after excuse have pushed us on the path to becoming a shell of a town, where all we have are vacation homes, second homes, and retirees. All it takes is a short drive north to see where the path we are on leads. We have to change our path. We need to build smaller, denser units, and we need to go up higher in the downtown, and we need to do it now. Enhancing key resources and infrastructure. To me, this is a no-brainer. We are in coastal California during a time of major climate change with an over-reliance on one key piece of infrastructure. We had three major areas of concern, but thanks to the new Water Resource Center, we have only two, and we are well on the way to solving one of them. We need water, and we will always need water. We should advance as fast as possible on the water recovery portion of the new plant. To not do so is at least short-sighted. At worst, it's unforgivable. In closing, the last need is the waterfront. It is a key to our revenue generation. If we don't maintain and protect it, we will be forced to become a place with no hope of a better future. We cannot build a thriving community without a thriving waterfront. In closing, I know these decisions are not easy, but the facts are if we don't increase our revenue, increase our housing stock, and enhance our key resources and infrastructure, we will not become a Morro Bay that is vibrant, resilient, and thriving. We will become a shell of a town. Some may tell you there is another way. In my opinion, those people are either uninformed, not focused on the long term, or in the worst case, disingenuous. Thank you very much for your time, your hard work, and your service to our community. Your job is rarely easy, but it's always important. Thank you very much.
Good evening, members of the council, mayor, and other representatives, and Jeanette, thank you so much for hosting. My name is Heidi Bea. And I just have one issue after listening to all the other issues. I would strongly urge a comprehensive infrastructure plan of the city streets and sewers, particularly in light of the recent heavy rains.
Thank you. Susan Funk, followed by Glenn Silloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and colleagues. I'm Susan Funk. I'm Mayor Pro Tem of Atascadero, just up the road that we are happy to have newly reopened. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight. I'm here in my capacity as chair of the Countywide Homeless Services Oversight Council. And we've been working with all of the cities and the county to develop a countywide plan that was finally approved by the County Board of Supervisors last August. Morro Bay had a very important voice in that because your city manager was one of the 8 people on that steering committee, and Scott was great. He was very involved in the process. And what we're asking and encouraging all the cities to include homelessness and affordable housing in their city goals setting, in particular to collaborate with the county and other cities in addressing the challenges of homelessness and housing, because these are big problems and none of our cities can solve these alone. And shoving people back and forth from one jurisdiction to another is not solving any problem and is damaging to the individuals involved and just makes it harder. If you want to have the things, the wonderful waterfront, enjoy the safety of it at the beach on the rock, all of the things that you're looking for in the community, we have to be able to address homelessness, because otherwise all of those things are either more difficult or more costly to achieve. So what we just ask for included in your objectives, it's not saying that it's going to be a big city expense, but we need your heads in the game. We need your leadership so that your city manager is authorized to work with the other city managers. That's a key way that we're coordinating between the cities in moving forward. And we want you to be able to hear the great ideas that your citizens have been giving you for maybe specific things that can be done. And let's coordinate together and help you get the resources to make those things happen. This is, so I ask you to just include that in your objectives so that we can all be moving forward together. There will be a similar effort in housing that is coming up over the next year. And these are, of course, very closely related problems. So I appreciate your help and thank you all for your service.
Thanks for coming over, Susan.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Silloway. I'm a resident of Morro Bay. What I was going to say, the previous two speakers beat me to it, but you're going to have to hear it one more time a little bit differently. Housing and homelessness are issues that showed up on your grid as top priorities. I want to reinforce that. What I hope to do, though, is also to get you to see that you can participate in processes that are going on now to get something actually done. Because we talk about this all the time, but if you look at the RENA allocations for this city, RENA being the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, by income level, we're not building any housing for low to moderate income people here. Lee said this, Susan has said this. What this does is make our community less whole, less diverse, less flexible, less capable of providing the kinds of services and needs that all of us have need throughout our lives. We need to fix it. Two things are going on. Susan talked about the regional compact in the 5-year plan that the county, and Susan worked on this a great deal. The county put together for a 5-year plan to reduce homelessness by 50%. In this upcoming year, that plan includes possibility for us to participate in a slow cog type of arrangement that she described. I urge you to do that because we need to figure out how the countywide where the resources need to be put in so it's not just push here and pop up here. Second thing, the slow cog, the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments is conducting a piece of research on something called the Housing and Infrastructure Plan. But what it's going to do is identify the most easily developed places in the county where you could put in low to moderate income housing. We should participate in that. And I hope that we can find something here to do that because we don't need to just talk about this housing, we need to build it. So please put that on your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all the speaker slips I have. So at this time, anyone else wishing to speak on the goals for tonight?
Paul Donnelly again. Just wanted to kind of expand on what I said earlier about stretching your dollar to getting the biggest bang for the buck. Seems to me the city relies heavily on consultants. And then once we get a consultant plan or whatever it is, one water plan, whatever it might be, then it just sits. But that money could have been put towards actually building something. It seems to me that you could probably hire a full-time engineer in your department to do those things for far less expense than hire a consultant. I worked for the county for over 27 years in the design division. As an engineer, we did all of our work in-house. And then we went out in construction, we did the construction with our own people. We rarely relied on using consultants, and you could save a ton of money if you just hire somebody to do it in-house. Thank you.
Good evening, Shirley Frazier, 26-year resident of Morro Bay. With regard to the communication and community engagement, I subscribe to the city's email process as far as getting agendas for everything. My first number one thing would be give us a consolidated agenda, bullet points for city council meetings. Some of those are 50 to 100 pages long. I think you lose people after the very beginning for that so that they're informed. Secondly, perhaps putting on some just bullet points again, hot topics on the city's website on Facebook so that people can see that. Also, as far as big meetings, I've missed some of the things where we've had it on TV a day or two ahead, letting people know on the local media. I think you can reach more people that way. Also, somebody spoke to it about the different surveys we've had. And in fact, the workshop that I attended for the battery storage facility with the boards there, we haven't received any overview from that or what the results were of those surveys or that evening from the boards and things. I know that that's still in process to come back and be revisited, but the survey we did tonight to speak to that specifically so that the residents feel like they're being heard in the essence of transparency. With regard to financial sustainability, I think we all know that we need the revenues and we need to look for ways to do that. What I have seen here in the very recent past is a lot of development, a lot of higher density, higher buildings, things that maybe don't reflect a lot or the majority of the residents' views. I hope there would be another way to do it instead of just catering to a lot of the developers and development, because we have something that is so wonderful here, and once we lose it, we will never get it back. I feel like if we're trying to go the way of SLO or PASO, and there are business owners or residents that want to go that way, then perhaps they're in the wrong community, because I do think we have a fabulous resource here. Things like the battery storage facility, the wind farm, the 30-foot height restriction that has been lifted. Some of the plans, yes, it's great to have grandiose ideas for the future. But again, if we lose the charm here, we'll never get it back. And I'm afraid we'll lose not only our residents, but we'll lose our tourists too. People come here for that serenity, that calmness, and that small fishing village. So thank you for your time and your hard work.
Good evening. My name is Terry Simons, and I attend a lot of these meetings. I reviewed the 2022-23 goals and objectives, and staff did a wonderful summary of the status of all of the line items. And I was struck, interestingly enough, that all of the line items, except for one, was shown as either completed or underway. Ironically, the one item that was shown as not yet started was a comprehensive review of the planning process. Now, if you're going to set goals and look to the future, it seems like the first thing that one would get done would be to review your planning process. The government does not make money. The government receives money from the governed. And the governed are the people that are out working every day, making money, and then contributing a portion of that back into the system that is there to help facilitate their making money. We can't expect our government to make money. We talk about enhancing government revenues. Where we need to start, if we want to enhance government revenues, is enhance the revenues of the governed, because they're the ones that are contributing to funding the city. It seems to me that the planning process is the most critical element in advancing the community. Unfortunately, many communities, and I hesitate to say this, but I think Morro Bay is one of those communities that use their planning process to actually deter the development and the progress of the governed. And I would encourage you to take a hard look at that and start planning for better planning. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Betsy Gaudette Cross, and a few of us got together and I'm just to decide on what goals we wanted, and I'm just going to read from my group. Potential large-scale developments that, I'm from Morro Bay, sorry, forgot to say that. Potential large-scale developments that impact Morro Bay land use and zoning must be included on a city council agenda. A public study session would be held before special or closed negotiation sessions are scheduled regarding these developments. By the way, this has been sent in and I saw it on the agenda, so you don't have to write everything down. Eliminate city administration alternatives to previously approved projects. In other words, no changing projects once they've been approved. Protect the city's general plan visitor service commercial zoning on the Embarcadero. Protect foot and bicycle traffic. Maintain current walking bridge connecting the Embarcadero with the Atascadero Road, and renew the 20-year lease with the Morro Dunes RV Park. Study feasibility of an additional Embarcadero exit and entry and exit of Highway 1 and Main Street through the power plant property. Revisit Cal Poly graduate urban design studio, that was from spring 2014, the plan for North Embarcadero. Enhance public involvement. Hold community study sessions on large projects to provide information and receive feedback from the citizens. Place a notice on the city council agenda 2 weeks before the event. Provide an overhead projector at city meetings so citizens can use this device during public comment. We've had some issues where the flash drives don't work, and so we'd like an alternative in case they don't work. Update city website so it's more user-friendly. It's impossible to find documents. Give 90,000 to AGP to upgrade the AV equipment at the Vets Hall. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to share and have some input. And I would like to thank all the residents who are here for showing up. I think that's really a nice turnout. I heard a little bit of doomsday and I thought I might, in hopes of being positive for some moms and dads out there, I wanted to share that, well, I grew up here. I have a third generation granddaughter at Morro Bay High School. My husband and I, between us, have 8 children and 29 grandchildren. And we just heard that we're having another one. So that's great. But then I want to also share that in our county, all but 11 of those soon to be 50 live here in the county. And they have businesses, they're RNs, they're successful, they're, making it happen. So it is possible. And anyway, I'll share some goals. So don't lose sight of the fact that we're a good place to be in. We are productive and we do have lots of opportunities in the tourist service, medical, all kinds of fields. So Morro Bay citizens do want local control. Please do not permit SLO County, state, and federal entities to bypass our city government. If they are discussing Morro Bay land and harbor water, talk to our mayor first. To maintain fair representation among all nonprofit groups, attendance by group members at city staff meetings shall not be permitted. This includes chamber members. Dismiss current law firm, Alshire Widener LLP, replace with a salaried attorney employed by the city. I believe that could be a $400,000 a year savings. Open a forensic investigation regarding the Vistra heading Addis MOU and the appraisal that undervalued the power plant acreage, 90+ oceanfront acres. Protect our 1981 Measure D initiative in all of its entirety. The city may not enter into negotiations that seek to compromise Measure D. The people voted on this. Set standards for width and depth of our harbor channels. Create protections for our recreational boaters, stand-up paddle boarders, kayakers, sailors, and all tourist-related activities on our harbor. Our environment is to be treasured. It's rare. Please protect it.
Now for something completely different. I'm Dead Air Dave from 97.3 and 107.9 The Rock, your listener-supported community radio station right here in Morro Bay. Surprise! Because a lot of people still don't know we're on the air. And believe it or not, we're celebrating pretty soon our 9th year of broadcasting right here in Morro Bay. And yeah, right? So if you're a fan and you know about the station, spread the word and tell all your friends because so many people still don't know we exist. But somehow we've existed this long through the kind, generous, and tax-deductible donations made by people in our community. So we want to thank everybody for that. So if you want to make a donation, we will gladly accept that. If you own a business, You can underwrite blocks of time. You'll get on-the-air mentions and announcements. So not only are you helping us out, but also if you keep a public file, it makes you look pretty good that you help support a nonprofit organization that serves the community. Also, I want to let you know that along with being nonprofit and non-commercial and serving the community, we've expanded. So here in Morro Bay in the Estero Bay area, you can tune us in at 97.3 on your FM dial. In Paso, in that area, 107.9. And you can stream us anywhere, everybody. I'm talking to you guys at home. centralcoastradio.org, centralcoastradio.org. If you happen to be involved in a nonprofit organization here in the community yourself, and you have an event coming up, or you just want to spread the word, again, we're here to serve the community. So contact us about your organization, and we will make announcements on the air for you. Could possibly even have you on the air if you're not mic shy. And again, promote your organization as well, because our goal here, besides playing a vast array of music, is serving the community. So again, you can get a hold of us by email, yourvoice@centralcoastradio.org, and let us know about your organization. And again, all of you can tune in and check us out, 97.3, 107.9 FM, and streaming everywhere at centralcoastradio.org. And we also have apps too for both your iPhone and your other thing, whatever that is. I have an iPhone. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave. We're right across the hallway from community radio, so I can vouch for how great it is and how helpful it is for the community. I'm Sharon O'Leary. I'm over at the Community Resource Connections Office for the City of Morro Bay. And this evening, I'd like to speak towards the goals of safe parking and warming shelter. So our office has been doing outreach for 10 years. And that means we monitor the food bank programs and various other programs around town, circulate a resource list, and answer questions and kind of direct people to various social services, different programs and whatnot. And over the years, we've garnered a lot of information about how to go about safe parking or a warming shelter. We had a forum here 3 or 4 years ago with Los Osos Cares, where Bruce Gibson, our supervisor, hosted a New Beginnings Center in Santa Barbara. They've got a safe parking program, which is a permitted program through the city of Santa Barbara. It's a model. They could come to Morro Bay and develop a model with our planning and community development of folks. And it's probably time to start thinking again more seriously about that. In our homeless community, there is a significant group of people that live out of their vehicles. And right at the moment, it's kind of random parking around and about. As folks gather down at community dinner at the food banks, we can address some of their issues, but safe parking is something we can do in Morro Bay. A warming shelter during the flood, I went down and spent hours with the Red Cross to find out how they put together a warming shelter. And again, same sort of thing. It would be contracting with a nonprofit that would run it. Volunteers are always welcome, but when it comes to these two things, safe parking or warming shelter, it's really a health and safety issue to have professionals there to run it. It was really impressive to see what the Red Cross did. So I hope these two considerations will continue and we can progress towards safe parking and some form of warming shelter by contracting with companies that are used to running these kind of programs. Thank you.
I just got a speaker slip from Dawn, but we're past speaker slips. You're welcome to come up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. I'm Don Maruska. I've had a business here in Morro Bay for 29 years and was attracted to this area because it's a wonderful place to live. It's got great natural environment, and the fishing community is something that we love. And this community has lots of service needs. And to satisfy those service needs, we really need to take a careful look at how can we generate revenue opportunities that will support our aspirations for this being a vital and sustaining community. And so there are really two opportunities that I wanted to highlight to you about that. One is the disposition of the Morro Bay power plant property. That has sat there as an idle asset for ages, and it's really time to take a fresh look at what are effective ways to use that property, perhaps for the community to be more proactively involved in what the opportunities are for that property and what some of the options are to both generate revenue and have the kind of visitor serving services that we'd love to see there and things that would support our own community and the interests of the community. So I think there's a great potential there, but we need to give attention to fiscal sustainability and economic vitality. And that's really an asset that's right in front of us. I think the city taking a proactive approach to guide and direct how that would be developed, versus waiting for proposals from a landowner to guide what we do would make a lot of sense. I think there's some options that could be pursued to meet community objectives and to fulfill the revenue generating capability of that property. The second thing is climate action. It's a really important opportunity for us. This is the golden year, really, for climate action. Never before has there been such an alignment of federal, state, and local and 3CE incentives, rebates, et cetera. It really behooves our city to act as a convener, not as the one that does the heavy lifting, but the city can be a convener to welcome the organizations like 3CE, the Slow Climate Coalition, EcoSlow, and many others that are eager to work with this community and help them take advantage of the dollars that are on the table here to do really good things that'll help lower people's bills and help us to have the clean environment that we all aspire to have. So this is a great opportunity. I thank you for taking the time and effort and interest in engaging the community around this discussion. I see great potential ahead for the community and hope we can all work together to realize that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for putting this on, Mayor and everybody here. My topic's going to be the Maritime Museum here in Morro Bay. When I travel, I don't care where it is, Oregon, Washington, the East, Australia, New Zealand, I could go on. Everybody along the coastline has a Maritime Museum. We have one here, and I appreciate the city has really been neat to us. You've been fantastic. We're not talking about a monetary so much as the support when we want to have something built and so forth. We are in a great expansion program right now, and we have 3 beautiful events coming up in Morro Bay. One is the Rock, and that's going to be a fundraiser for us. And the other one's going to be the Family Days. Now, we don't have the Harbor Festival here anymore, but now we have the Family Days. The Family Days is a local community event that will be taking place later on in the year. There was, excuse me, my thought. There, we started out, this is our first, last year was our first time. We expect 200 to 300. We had close to 2,000. It was fantastic the way people came out. The Selenius Native Americans have a display there, and so forth. And we have the big ones coming up at the end of this year. And that's going to be the San Salvador, the tall ship. We expect thousands of people to come. And one thing that we do, we're all volunteers. I know I joined about 8 months ago, and I really enjoy the Maritime Museum. Everybody that comes in there, visitors, are so happy. We have movies inside our museum, and we have people from, I've met people from China, I've met people from Europe, I've met people from Australia, and also in the United States. All the states have been in our deal. And what do? They spend time here. I ask them, are you staying in Morro Bay? Most of them say, yes, we're in Morro Bay, and we really enjoy it. And so now we're closed Tuesdays and Thursdays, but we like to make it 7 days. With that said, we need volunteers. Lots of volunteers, and you just have a ball. When I've been on the when I joined about 8 months ago, I got on the board. That's exciting. And how I got there. But anyway, it's just fun. And volunteers, when especially the San Salvador, we're going to need hundreds of volunteers. And we're going to have a website. The website's going to be there to be able to volunteer for anything. You want to pick up trash, or you want to be on the tall ship with that. And hey, that's my time's up. Hey, y'all have a good one. Hey, sunshine and no rain, huh? Oh, the Rock, you're invited too.
Hi, David Nelson again. I actually agree with Mr. Marusco that it's really time to look at that power plant property differently. I really urge you guys to try to get into the history of this thing, because just in my time being here, trying to stop the biggest gas power plant in California being put here, I found out a lot about this place. You know, and one of the big things is, so for 50 years, they ran in here telling us they weren't hurting our estuary or anything. All of a sudden, the number has come out 17 to 33% of our estuaries being killed by a power plant. Now that went on for 50 years, and we bought the story that everything was fine, and PG&E made lots of money, and Duke came to town, and they owned a whole bunch of GE generators that they bought up all of GE generators, and they were spreading them through the country. We have them up in Moss Landing right now, and they were going to put 2 of them with afterburners here. I mean, it was insane, but they're not. But PG&E, when they sold it to Duke, they said, hey, you can't do anything except a power plant on that. And our city accepted it. I mean, Duke bought that power plant for $35,000 for the land. It was a public utility, you know, and they used it and they made money off of it. Then they sold it and they made money. I mean, Duke raped this town. Duke raped this state. I mean, they paid hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. Our land is damaged. That was reclaimed land for sure. If you know anything about the Embarcadero, it's filled, but they destroyed that land. That land, we had an impotent EPA come in here and do all the inspections. Well, we know that there's 17 areas of concern in there. We don't know how bad it is because it's a power plant site. It doesn't have to be a power plant site. My idea is that PG&E on the other side of the bay has destroyed 3 miles of ocean bottom with their outfall, with their desal plant. This is documented stuff. They said they were going to destroy 3/4 of a mile, and now it's up to 3 miles. They should have to mitigate, give whoever owns this place the 100 acres over at Diablo, let them put their batteries over there, and the batteries are a joke. Batteries are changing so rapidly. Even Elon Musk plant in Nevada is already changing the kind of batteries they're making. This is just not a good idea for Morro Bay. Let's make more, keep Morro Bay, Morro Bay. You talk about building. I want to see the water results before you start putting all this in building in here. Cambria and San Simeon are dying of thirst, and their town and their real estate are going to get hit by it, and we're going to be in the same mess.
Mayor, council members, thanks for having me. I've never been to a council meeting before, and I'm not used to speaking in front of people, so I kind of have a little stage fright. So that's going to be first off. But I'm a resident of Templeton and a recent business owner here in Morro Bay. And over the last few months, as I've wandered around the city, I've noticed that there's a lot of these flyers out about no on BESS, and it's no, no, no. And I'm just curious whether there's been any considerations or studies on alternative plans for that property. It's 24 acres. And so that we could do something that we could say yes to as opposed to no, and nothing else comes of it. What I'd suggest possibly that we could do some sort of a community operated organic farm there and involve some of the members or many of the members of the city. And it would be, I think, a real positive thing for the city to have. The children in the community could get involved with that. The adults could, and we'd all feel a membership of that, and it would be something that would be a nonprofit type of an organization. And I don't want to take up any more time, but I've got lots of ideas on it if anyone wants to talk to me about it. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Dorfman, and I'm a 15-year resident of Morro Bay. I have two teenage sons who are thriving in Morro Bay. They love it here. One of my sons is an avid surfer, and he said to me, "Mom, they are not going to do all that on the waterfront, are they? They're not going to put all this big industrialization on the waterfront." He said, "All of my friends are talking about it," which I think is fascinating for somebody who's not real interested in a whole bunch of stuff, being a 17-year-old, that him and his peers are actually discussing this issue. This is how important it is to the generations to come. And I think all the comments here have been so insightful and so intelligent. We're really at a crossroads. I think we all feel that we're at a crossroads right now. And which way are we going to go? I feel like, and many people have said it, our environment, our pristine environment is our greatest treasure. And once it's gone, you can't get it back. So I urge the powers that be, all of you up front, in the goals that we retain the zoning that's in the general plan that keeps the zoning down on the Embarcadero Measure D in place, as well as the visitor serving commercial designation. I think that there are lots of creative ways. I know we need to raise some income. I've spent a lot of time in a little town called Crested Butte in Colorado. And for them, they also believe that the environment is very important and they wanted to protect it. So one of the things they did, which maybe is something that we can do here, is they did a 1% for the environment. So for everybody who ate out at any restaurant, it was an optional, the restaurant would put it on there, 1%, and it would go into a fund for the environment. And the consumer could say, "No, thank you, I don't want to support that." So it's not adding taxes or things to people who really don't want to do it. But most people were like, "Sure, I'll pay 1%." And maybe that can go towards protecting the harbor. I mean, it can go to all sorts of things. I'm just throwing an idea out here of how to raise money, not necessarily off the backs of the residents. But I do think that, let me see, sorry, I didn't have the prepared notes. I think we need to protect our estuary. Morro Bay is very green already. I'm very concerned reading the reports about the infrastructure that is looking to come to Morro Bay, and actually feeling like Morro Bay wants that. Which for me is kind of shocking. I speak with a lot of people, and I haven't talked to anybody who's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So that's my 2 cents. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment on the goals? AGP, do we have anyone in the queue?
There's nobody online right now with their hands raised, so we're good.
Thank you. Going, gone. Bring it back to council and back to Jeanette.
Well, thank you. I want to shift our attention now to council. I applaud the audience for definitely sharing their heart and their thoughts, and we captured what you said. So just know that we're taking good notes. That being said, I want to shift our attention now to council in terms of Now that what you've heard, there's lots of great thoughts and ideas. We had, I'm gonna put the, can we put the PowerPoint back up? Yes, please. I'd prefer not to see myself. Keep going. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. That being said, shifting the attention of just the fact that you were able to hear the various voices, just check in, because these 4 goals that we've put up here are loosely held, meaning that we want first and foremost to make sure that this is in line with you and your agenda for us, first and foremost for the city, but also for staff to be able to understand and have clear direction in terms of how we would operationalize these. So I would love to hear, in no particular order, any particular reason or of these 4, what is important to you, so we can capture those as well. And we can go down the list if the names don't suit you in terms of the goal terminology. For instance, public infrastructure, you would want to call it something different. Please feel free to share, and then why that's important. So we can start at that and then move our way over. At any time, anyone can start.
You want to start at what end?
Not any particular
Oh, in no
direction,
particular
no
order.
particular
Okay.
order, and
Thank
no
you.
particular order up here as well. So if you say, you really want to speak on the fiscal sustainability, we'll start there.
Anyone want to kick it off voluntarily? There you go.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're going to comment on them all, but given what you've heard, first and foremost, is there any of these particular 4 goals resonate or don't resonate with you as a council member?
I think they all do, but I'm going to pick out communication and community engagement based on tonight. I mean, this is such a great turnout here. It's amazing. And I think that that's clearly important. We need to have this at every meeting, have, a great turnout like this, and the community needs to be made aware of everything that's going on, and they're showing us that that's what they want. So that's all. I started.
I'll tag on with that. I agree. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you for sharing the comments. With a little understanding that COVID was so restrictive. This is the first public goal setting that's happened in years now because of that. And so people do want to be involved. You do want to be here. We're here to work as a team. This is all about a team, not just us up here, but all of you. And so the engagement is important. And we heard that back when we were campaigning. I know the 3 of us that were out walking the streets, farmers markets, talking to people. This has been shared over and over and over. And I hope that we're making those efforts. I hope that those show that we're trying to be open at the meetings, public comment, workshops, and staff. And we've got our hours back open at City Hall. I think that's important. We still have a little ways to go, but a lot of that's been staffing, and anyone who has businesses knows how difficult that is at all levels right now. So it's a work in progress, but with all of us staying engaged, I feel really positive, which is not a word that comes out of my mouth all the time. So I'll pass it down with that.
All right, I guess I'll go next. I want to thank everyone also that came out this evening. What a great turnout. We had a full house. We had to bring in more chairs. That's a great thing, good problem to have. And I want to thank everyone, all of our staff members here that will have to take all of this information tonight and produce actionable items for us to decide upon. So looking at this list, yes, I agree that they cover the majority of the issues that have been brought to our attention. My question is regarding housing. I'm wondering if housing is enough, or if we should also, if it should be housing / homelessness. And just throwing that out there. Other than that, I think that this list is pretty well representative of the main issues that have been brought to our attention.
Thank you. Would anyone on the council want to share or add to that comment?
I'm sorry, Jeanette, do you want me to add to what she just said?
Yes, we'll start with that, and then if you would like to
Yes,
elaborate on
I
something else.
actually do think we should consider having homeless be a part of slash housing. I think that's probably, based on what I'm seeing here, the proper placement for it. But I did, if I may, I also want to thank everyone for coming out here. I see such a diverse group of the community here, which makes me very happy. And so I wanted to say that. When I'm looking at fiscal sustainability and economic vitality, in my mind, I'm thinking fiscal health of our community. So I'm not sure if maybe those words are exact for me, but of course I'm one of 5. I think that the other thing that I wanted to include is that in my time here, especially working with the chamber, there was a lot of workshop being done in 2016. The chamber was heavily involved in doing strategic planning workshops. There was something called LEAP, which Don Marushka, who's here tonight, actually led for us. And there were multiple forums and things of that nature that dove into economic development. One of the things that I just wanted to put out there is the importance of maybe reviewing some of those presentations somehow within this, so that the public who maybe at that time didn't even live here or maybe wasn't able to make it might be able to see some of the things that we have done with regard to public input and workshops. I think that would be important.
One of the, well, let me back up a second. I too am absolutely delighted to see how many people are here. It's kind of hard to know sometimes when you throw a planning session, who all's going to show up, and this has been great. I like the 4 goals, and under public infrastructure, one of the things I didn't hear tonight, but it's the reason we're in this particular room, is to work on some improvements to the Vets Hall. And so that's one I'd like to throw in there.
I think we did have one comment on the Vets Hall. Did I hear that earlier? No. Okay. Yeah, but that's a very good point. We captured that.
I think we can have our own comments on that.
Yes, for sure. And yes.
Hence the reason we're here. And I see that as just one item, actionable item under. I think that, the bigger picture is our long-term needs assessment, which is being done and our revenue planning. So how do we balance all that again as we come back? All these things tonight are important to this community and to this council and to the staff, but with limited financial resources at this time, especially coming out of the storm damage, how do we prioritize it? And this is going to be what's important right now before us.
Good point. Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question regarding the structure of this meeting. Do we have a chance at some point to provide input on specific items, prioritization, that sort of thing? Will that be a part of the meeting at some point, or is this the time?
This is the time. We're getting
This
right
is
there.
the time. Now is the time. Okay.
And this is where I just wanted to check our assumptions that there was, based on what we've heard, was there anything about these 4 goals that you would want to change in terms of the titles? I think one possibility. If we needed to add something, this is kind of, we'll set the framework by which now we can go around to anyone. We can start at the public infrastructure and really think about sharing maybe 1 or 2 of the things that you think are the top priorities that we can capture, bring back to staff and see how we can move this together.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So we're creating these goals, but the prior goals, do we know which ones we've accomplished? Are we going to?
Yes,
you know what I mean? All of those specific items on that, did we?
I believe that was presented on the 28th.
Okay.
That was part of that. That was already showed what was completed, in progress, and then ones that are not completed yet. But we can go there if that would be helpful before we start to set that in motion. Would you like to see them? I have them
Well,
up on the
because
screen.
they overlap and just to, yeah,
Sure.
just to clarify that.
Sure.
And thank you.
We can go there for sure. Let's move along. Oh, here we go. So here are some of the action items that were moved forward, that we're carrying forward. So if council wants to take a moment to look at that and then see if there's anything that you want to address in terms of any of those, the status comments on the action items themselves.
So council, if you recall at your last meeting, we did present the status of all 39 of the prior action items. We reported on the, I think it was 15 that were done. And then we reported out on the ones that are still being worked on. And of those, it turns out that several are going to be done in the next couple months. So what you have on slide 17 are the action items that are in progress that staff is recommending be carried forward as part of next year's plan. And it would be helpful if council disagreed or has questions about the progress of any of these that we're recommending going forward.
I'd like to make the comment real quick on City Manager Carpenter. I'm wondering if we could prioritize, the items that are in progress in order to not delay completion. Can we prioritize as council to complete these as top priority and before we move on to new priorities? Can that be part of what we decide tonight, or is that, I'm trying to wrap my head around what sorry, I apologize if I'm being confusing here, but just wondering if we could make it a priority to complete those items.
Yeah, if that's the direction of the council, we could prioritize those. There's some of these are going to take longer to accomplish than others.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
So-
some will integrate.
Right. Well, and what I'm getting at is, of course, staff would be able to decide like which of those are, to bring back those that are in progress, those that are the most achievable. But I'd like to see some of these get completed before we task them with a whole new crop of direction, new goals. So I don't know. I just would like to see some priorities around things that are already in progress.
So we can take time now to do that because that's why we're
Mhm.
here,
Mhm.
is to look at these and perhaps maybe we go down there and we get, I want to be cognizant of like the prioritization in terms of making any decisions, but to help that, we can do one of two ways. We can give you a moment, we can take a break, and you can take a moment and maybe put them in categories of like 1 to, I think there's 15 in that number of prioritization. And we can take that because tomorrow we're working with staff to put things to juxtapose what we heard today and what you're thinking about from the goals and the objectives going forward. And we can compare and contrast that and bring that back to you on the 11th for you to be able to see how that all comes together. That's one way we can do it, or we can go down line item by item, but I just want to make sure that you have time to think about it.
I think for the
Mayor
sake
Watson.
of time that, it would be better to integrate it rather than going item by item. And just looking at this, there's 3 items on here. You can talk about the housing element and the Seashell Estates land use, which the Planning Commission heard last night. To me, those all fall under housing. So I think a lot of these are going to integrate into, and until we discuss maybe, these were done again in 2021 during COVID. And we've had a lot of changes in land use laws and changes in community desires. So I think some of those will integrate in, and others are probably going to drop down lower. Are you okay with that?
I'm just trying to, when I look at all of the goals, the action items that are currently underway, and then I know we're going to have a whole new set, I just want to be very cognizant of our staff's time and what's achievable, especially with a lot of new staff. And when we move forward with this goal setting, I really want to be cognizant of that in all of our, in everything that we do. I really value our staff. I'd like to keep our staff. And I just want to make sure that we're being respectful of your time and that we're as efficient with this process as possible. Also, I would like to change the wording that I used for homelessness to unhoused, please.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, gotta get that there. Thank you.
You bet. So I want to move us back here for a moment because there's a lot of things that are going to be carried forward to Councilmember Ford's point that the staff has looked at and said, these are things that we think we should move forward. And you'll be pleasantly surprised there are a lot of the same thread by which things funnel through. So I think at this point, I think it's helpful for us to know what's top of mind, because that's prior council, and how do we merge those together based on where you want to take us in terms of your leadership and the goals and objectives you feel are important. How do we utilize that as the spearhead going forward, and how do all the other things integrate into that, so that, to your points, the limited resources we have of staff, we are able to accomplish those things in a more strategic manner, check by check, and being able to go down the line items as they are. Is that fair? Any thoughts? Okay. So if we were to look at these 4 goals and say these are kind of our framework that we're going to be moving, some of the names might change or be integrated housing and both homelessness. When it comes to public infrastructure, are there particular items that you heard or things that are important to you that you'd like to have as part of the objectives, goal statements for public infrastructure? And we can go in no particular order, but all council will share.
Streets, sidewalks, no, the bike paths, all of it, everything incorporated into the streets. I think that was our number one comment we heard in our survey, as far as concerns for infrastructure needs and repairs. And I think the community spoke pretty loudly that we really need to be more aggressive in our addressing of that.
Okay, streets, next. Councilmember Edwards.
I agree that streets would be the number one. And I was thinking in terms of, I like the idea of looking at roadways, because then I feel like we can dive more deeply into striping and all the other things that we could look at with streets. You know, I'm not sure.
Or sidewalk.
Yeah, like I'm not sure streets is all of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Landrum.
Harbor infrastructure, the harbor, I heard that pretty loud and clear.
Okay. Councilmember Bertram.
I'm curious about whether it would be possible to add something else in here that's in one of the categories.
Sure.
Okay. Under fiscal sustainability and economic vitality, one of the things I didn't hear mentioned has to do with nighttime activity. Our downtown is very quiet. There could be lots more going on there, and just thinking about that as a possible additional goal.
Okay, so a goal, or are you thinking that's like a goal statement action item for fiscal sustainability?
Yeah, a goal statement action
Okay.
item. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ford.
Okay, so regarding public infrastructure, I agree with streets and harbor, but in the streets, I'm not sure if storm drains would fall, that is literally under the streets. I think that that's something that's important to be proactive in identifying our most vulnerable and areas and proactively, caring for them before they collapse. So I don't know if that would fallen, I would think that'd be a separate, storm drains would be a separate.
Objective or
Yeah.
goal statement? Okay, fair.
So.
Mayor Rixon, besides streets?
Probably our building, maintenance, our long-term maintenance on our city-owned properties.
Okay.
I think, all of them, this building, the Vets Hall,
Yes.
City
Okay.
Hall, all of them need attention.
Fair. Anything else that you want to add to public infrastructure? Okay, moving along to just on the next is fiscal sustainability and economic vitality. Anyone want to start with that one? Councilmember Edwards?
All right. So some of the things that I wanted to have as be action items, is that where we're going here? Okay. I'd like to take a look at our property portfolio, the cities itself, and have a presentation, value, square footage. Are we maximizing and leveraging all of that? Take a look at our paid parking study that was done. I just, maybe I haven't seen it, but I would like the opportunity to have a presentation. Take a look at, because we do have a lot of, lease development going on down on the waterfront, and I'm concerned about traffic circulation. So if we're, do a development here, do a development there, how are we going to know how many parking spaces to have for each one, when one might take away some from another? And then we've talked about in the past, one-way movement of traffic on the Embarcadero. So whatever it would take for us to look at that. I also want to look at code enforcement. Are we maximizing that? Since we implemented it, both dealing with traffic and STRs. Grant opportunities, something that I was curious about. I know that staff spends a lot of time probably reviewing and looking at that information, and I know that we have consultants, Ferguson and Townsend, both in DC and Sacramento. Are we leveraging the use of them enough to get some of these grants, go after money up there? Transportation Rec Department, I guess I'm talking about all internal stuff.
Okay, fair. Councilmember Ford?
I like all of that. I'd like to add, I've in some of the reports that we received and some input that we also got from various members of our community is streamlining our permitting process. So I think that would be really helpful in our economic development of our city, to work on that process, improving that. I think we can improve on anything, right, at any time, but I think that that's definitely been brought to light a few times. And so I think that that's, aside from what Councilmember Edwards said.
Okay, Councilmember Landrum?
As far as the parking that Councilmember Edwards was talking about, I would also like to look into, I don't remember who brought it up, but the concept of the kiosk and the parking down by the Rock, and look into that, if we could tag that into that. I don't know if they studied that or if that was part of the study. I don't know, but do you know?
It sounds like we should have a informational presentation to the whole council about the previous study and the current status.
Yeah.
I believe the initial study did discuss it, but the previous council directed us to look just at the Embarcadero as a pilot program. But we can schedule something for the whole council.
Councilmember Barton, did you want to add anything besides the comment you made about the entertainment nightlight? For fiscal sustainability and economic vitality?
Right. And part of what was, I think might be a thing that's sort of missing and could be worked on is to have more different things going on downtown in the evenings. It's very, very quiet. And so I'm thinking in terms of perhaps people who want to come and start a business here might have some extended hours, or a restaurant might have extended hours, that kind of thing. And so that's what I was thinking of is to, if we're looking for different ways to improve the economy, that's an area that seems to be maybe a little dark. And so it might be one that could be worked on.
Okay. Yes.
I'd
Councilmember
like
Ford?
to add one more item, and I think it would fall under economic development, would be the waterfront master plan. And I know that that's a big one, and I don't know if that is, I don't want to lose staff. I know that's a big task. However, I think that at some point we do need to revisit that, and that could really help us with the revitalization of our waterfront.
Thank you. Councilmember Edwards?
I might really throw a wrench in here. So when I was thinking about this, I was looking at financial health, financial sustainability, economic vitality, but then I see that communication, community engagement, and I started thinking, what if it's kind of community planning through public engagement? Meaning when I was looking at reviewing Catalyst sites, for example, that is engaging the community in a presentation to then kind of get involved with that conversation. If you form an ad hoc design review committee for looking at the downtown, you're also engaging, maybe that person, that group's going back, reporting to an advisory board or wherever they would report to. And again, that's another opportunity for the community to be engaged or to have information. So I'm trying to figure out where we can, I think those two overlay.
Sure. And just know that the goals shouldn't be mutually exclusive. If you think of them, we're talking about one city, one team in terms of a council. So you'll see there may be opportunities for things to be in a multitude of them, which is not uncommon. But for the sake of having clarity and focus for staff, given the resources and the time that we have to achieve goals in 2 years, how do we really break them apart and give them actionable, direction for them to be able to come back and give a work plan? So the more that we can think about them in their own thread, even though that there is going to be multidimensional interactions between them, is what is helpful for staff.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Whitson?
Ready?
Yep.
I agree with the waterfront master plan, and I think talking with staff before with Mr. Graham, there is some potential for some funding to start, but it's a long process. It will help guide us with opportunities down there. Visit tourism. Tourism is our, economic driver right now. And, we need to support the projects that Visit Morro Bay is bringing to talk about enhancing the downtown areas with those vitality projects and things. But for me, economic development, all these are all, I think, important and factor in. But I want to see opportunities for the organic regrowth from within. The chamber has an economic development contract with the city of Morro Bay, and they have members of their board that are out in the community wanting to work to bring in new businesses. I want to see Quintana, which was devastated between COVID and Anvil over the last couple of years. Their businesses were just all but destroyed, and we have an opportunity to revitalize that area along with the area from the roundabout all the way down to South Bay Boulevard. The discussion about opportunities for some light manufacturing, light commercial, those things are all jobs and enhance the property and bring sales tax. There was a boat business here in town that left because they outgrew the area. So we lose those sales tax revenues, we lose those jobs. So I really want to see that focus on those opportunities for redevelopment in that whole Quintana corridor. And there where you can put a taller building without taking away the charm of the downtown area and really bring some long-term meaningful businesses and job opportunities that aren't always going to be wrapped around tourism.
Any other comments or action for fiscal sustainability and economic vitality. So we'll move on to housing / homelessness.
Can I?
Absolutely.
So as far as fiscal accountability for whatever that category is, can we look at the cost of outsourcing and what we're paying for outsourcing versus what it would be in-house for, some of the people brought that up, and can we put that as something to look at? And I had something else to tag on to what Councilmember Barton said. Where did you say?
More likely. More.
No, it wasn't
Events.
events. Well,
Nightlife?
it was also with another speaker. I thought was saying something about having like more public meetings with the chamber and the city council, and I think that might be helpful, to kind of combine, because I know that the chamber does a lot of work with their group, and they include the community, but sometimes that communication doesn't get to the greater community, and maybe like we could help facilitate that somehow, and because business is so important to our health, and I would like to find ways to work on that.
Okay.
Before we leave that, I think both for infrastructure and fiscal sustainability, staff is going to be recommending that we pursue reimbursement for the storm damage, that we seek grants, that we obviously fix what's damaged. So that's going to be a major effort as well.
I would add on to that real quick is mentioning the grants, the opportunities. And so it begs the question, do we look at, when we're looking at in-house versus contract services, staff's time for grant writing versus contracting grant writing? So those are potentials that, yes, there's a cost, but specific to those different departments bring a lot of opportunity for revenue. So I think that should be part of that conversation.
Okay, we'll move on to the next goal, housing - homelessness. Who would like to start in terms of either or focus on
I'll
housing?
go, if it's okay.
Councilmember- yeah.
Okay. Okay, so regarding housing, we've heard things, we've heard tonight, even, the need for affordable housing. I feel that there's a need for all types of housing in our city, mostly affordable, of course. But I think that we need to really look at opportunities. I think it was mentioned, I think maybe you mentioned it, Councilmember Edwards, maybe not, about identifying areas within our town. Yeah, okay, I thought so. And so I think that kind of ties into it there. But definitely considering housing that's walkable to our downtown area, I think is really important that also ties into economic development and vitality and all of that. But also, so we have places for all types of people from all different types of backgrounds to live here. And so I think that it's important that we really look at that, continue to look at that. And then also for our unhoused, I would like for us to come up with an actionable item this year if we can. And not just to, let's work on it, or yeah, it's important, but I think we need to actually have an actionable item. So if that means we work on a disaster warming center or safe parking, whatever it comes to, I would like to see it, especially a warming center during disaster or during weather events. However that looks, I think that that's really important. Just a really quick side comment on that. I appreciate all that our city has done in the past, especially with these freakish storms we've had lately. I appreciate the Red Cross setting up shelters within our county. However, just in conversations that I've had with members of our community, are unhoused, it's an uncomfortable situation to be removed from our city to go to a shelter during those weather events. And so I'm wondering if it's possible for us to have something set up here, even if it's small, to offer those in need during those times. So, so that's really what I'm getting at, is that I'd like for us to come up with some sort of solution, or at least an action this year for that.
Can I suggest that we, regarding that, that we have some sort of a communication at a meeting, or I don't know how we would do it, but with the police department and, you know, members of the community maybe that are affected by that, and Sharon O'Leary, and, you know, could we do some kind of workshop? Yeah. And that way we'll have a better idea
Yeah.
of what direction to go in, because I know that there are different schools of thought on how to address that. And it would be good for everyone to know what is available and, you know, what the costs are involved in everything. So could we do a workshop? I think that might be a good way to handle it.
I think that that's an actionable item, providing, you know, and that goes to the communication portion of this as well. And it's been mentioned by members of our community that they're looking for workshop opportunities and ways to provide input. I think that something like that's great. I think it's a great starting point. However, I hope that it's not just all that we do, and that we all learn and talk about things, but then we don't actually act. And so I just want to put it out there that I hope that we have something concrete at the end of this that that's measurable, you know, that we could say we did it. And so, yeah, but thank you, Councilmember Landrum. I think that's a great idea.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yeah, I'd just like to also thank Susan Funk, who came out here tonight to express her, you know, hoping that we remain interested, because we have been in the past. Our former city manager, Scott Collins, did attend those, I think, the 5-year plan for the unhoused that is going on within our region. So I would hope that we would still continue to have a point person for that. Just a comment. Another thing that was mentioned by the public, I think it was former Mayor Irons, was a trash and hygiene program, which I thought was very interesting. It just struck a chord in me as just an actionable item to, at least within that workshop, to talk about. And also, I just, along with council members, Landrum, came back from our planning commission conference, of which I just spent 3 days just absorbing all this information with regard to housing, and how many of the bills coming down the pike are, you know, just the amount the state is going to be involved with, you know, cities, municipalities, really taking a look at their properties and saying, you know, what can we put out as RFP to affordable housing developers? So, I mean, this is going to be a big thing. The state's not gonna, you know, they're on this. So that's what I wanted to add to that.
Councilmember Burton? I think you keep saying it wrong. It's Barton. Sorry. Councilmember Barton, do you have anything that you'd like to add for homeless and housing?
One thing that has come up in previous renditions of looking at planning for the city, and it's oftentimes a request, are restrooms in public areas, like busy areas. We don't have a lot of those, and that might be, we have portables, but to actually put a nicer facility, I think, is something that would be helpful to a lot of people who visit Morro Bay in particular. So anyway, that's one more.
Mayor Wixon, do you have any that you'd like to add for homeless and housing?
I do. Back to unhoused, not
Unhoused.
homeless. Unhoused.
Forgive me.
I just spoke, you know, there's several programs. The one that Mr. Collins was attending, representing the city of Morro Bay's interest, but it's everything's coming to regional approaches. We have a task force here, or whatever term they're using, with the police department, the fire department, public services, community development, all participating in trying to find ways to improve the situation for our unhoused. There, you know, I just spoke beginning conversation with our supervisor Gibson. There's a new program called At Home. things that, and I see Sharon back there nodding her head. There's numerous programs for our unhoused. It's, as Councilmember Ford said, picking some things that we can take actionable items and looking at, can we establish emergency warming shelters during inclement weather, I think is something that's doable for us, just Morro Bay. The other things are bigger than us. We have to participate at a regional level. In San Luis, I know why they were building some of the centers there at Prado and those places. They would bring in portable showers, do haircuts, things like that. I think that we can do community outreach with organizations and offer some of those things. But it's important for us to continue the relationship with social services and those things to try and help move them into being housed. So that circles back to, you know, for me, we got away from housing because they're the same, but they're hugely different. And for me, affordable housing is not enough. Affordable on the coast of California is kind of a slippery slope, so to speak, in more ways than one. It needs to be, we need to look at low and very low income home opportunities, similar to what Haslow is doing over on Highway 41 right now. The waiting list is huge. And going back to what was shared about identifying city properties and things that we can actually participate in as a city. We can say to one of these housing groups, here, we have a piece of property, you know, the bocce ball court. No, just kidding. I asked, why did we put a bocce ball court in? You know, we have, the city has 2 pieces of property there. Should, you know, we didn't vision that. And especially as the state is requiring this, I think that some of our numbers and needs will be met by ADUs that are being done now and all the guidelines that are doing that. But for me, this circles back again, and I know it's not always a popular comment for those who have income housing here, but for me, the short-term rentals took away a huge amount of housing opportunities in our community. And I think there's a place and a need for them, but I think that for me, the numbers are just way too high and they were supposed to come down. We need to work on them coming down, because for each one of those that comes down off of a short-term rental, off of that 250 is another housing opportunity, hopefully for someone who wants to live in the community, whether it's a family, seniors, workers in our businesses. So trying to incorporate all those things into how we look at the housing opportunities, projects that are coming before us. I have great concerns with whether or not our infrastructure can handle it. We're getting, you know, we have this beautiful state-of-the-art sewer facility, reclamation, water, whatever you want to call it, but the infrastructure to get everything there is failing. And so to just go out and say, we're going to put 50 homes here and 50 homes here and 70 homes there doesn't work, because our infrastructure in town right now cannot handle it. So it all circles back again now to the infrastructure from the housing.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yeah, so I just want to pivot off of the housing as well. Since we're talking about that area, I just think it's really important to take a look at that downtown. I know we have committed to getting an ad hoc committee together, design review committee. And so I think an actionable, really quick actionable item is to get that done, get that committee together, talking about what the parameters are, you know, form-based setbacks, height, all of that going on in the downtown, and see if that makes sense for housing. And also, if we're dealing with, thinking about this, when I was thinking about some of the larger projects, again, on the education component, I think, you know, they've offered to come and educate. So quick actionable items. Reach has offered to come and educate us on the larger offshore wind project and their kind of take on it and what they've learned and what the region is looking at, as well as 3CE. They were willing to also come, they're a nonprofit organization, and they're willing to come and talk about their viewpoints. I think it's just good if we're going to be taking a look at these opportunities, especially the industrial ones. I'd really like to see some more education, and we've got multiple groups that would like to do that.
Fair. And that's, you know, I love that the things that you're sharing fall into multiple buckets. To that point, it goes to the communication and the community engagement as well. So thank you for sharing.
On the housing too, back refocusing on Quintana, for me, I see that, versus our downtown area. With the height changes, I see that as a potential for mixed use projects where, in that whole corridor, that could really go 2 and 3 stories without it changing the downtown character. So I think there's opportunities there for housing.
And also, Councilmember Edwards and I were at that planning conference last week. And what really hit me was the fact that the state has inserted itself so much into cities and trying to dictate how cities look, even though they're not here. Like, they don't know what we are and what we want to see or what we even need, but they're trying to insert their own will over us. And what really is the key, I think, is to keep your zoning and your general plan as low as possible, because with housing, there's a lot of wiggle room for them to easily go up and out. And so with that said, and what you were talking about, the downtown, what is that? The ad hoc group. I think in the interim, we need to look at pulling that back altogether, that height, bring it back down to 30 feet while we decide what we're going to do. And then to what Mayor Wixom was just saying, I think that I really love the Quintana, focusing on Quintana Road. For instance, I was at the Planning Commission last night meeting, and I spoke to the chair, and we talked about redeveloping the old Williams Brothers shopping center, which now has the dollar stores and the gym, to, like, I don't know how this works, like if it involves the chamber or if it involves the city, I don't know how it would work to try to incentivize those building owners to try to maybe do some sort of mixed use there with keep their retail stuff down below and go up, and I think that would be, and there's so much parking now. Parking would not be an issue, because if you do it downtown, I don't know where your parking would be. So to me, that solves a lot of problems. People can walk to shopping. It's close. I would like to somehow look at that, but I don't know how you do that.
Councilmember Edwards? do you
So
build
maybe
on that?
I was also thinking about a lot of, there's a lot of private owners involved in our city, whether it's, lots that are open, never been used, nothing done with them. Or, even during the storm situation, we recognize that people had lots and part of a creek. I mean, there's just so many things we don't, that we don't know until we know. And so maybe it's time that we have some public and private conversations with owners of those potential development areas. Action.
How do we do something like that? Is that another workshop, or?
I would encourage that to be part of the economic development that perhaps the chamber does with outreach. It seems that it would be more appropriate that through that capacity.
The economic development
Yeah,
contract.
through a starting point.
Sure.
Councilmember Barton, do you have any thoughts?
No, good.
Councilmember Ford, any thoughts before we move on from housing and unhoused?
No, I just wanted to say that I should have mentioned in the very beginning when I was talking about actionable items that I am thankful for one that did happen recently over the last year, that we do have we have an advocate that's out there with our unhoused that follows along with our police department and is boots on the ground and doing the work to help those who are already unhoused to get them services that are needed. So I am excited that we have taken it, there is something that is out there that's happening right now. But yeah, just going back to what I said before, I think it's important that we do have some more actionable items that are attainable and able to achieve within the next year if possible. And one last thing to say about the correlation between housing and unhoused is, I believe one of the most important things that any city, any county, anyone can do is to help prevent someone to becoming unhoused. I don't know how we can help that here. I think working together with the region, you know, as Mayor Pro Tem Susan Funk brought to our attention, is if we do identify unhoused as being one of our goals, it does open up the opportunity to work within our region to assist people before they become unhoused. Because really that's the ultimate goal, right? I mean, once they are unhoused, it's much harder, it's more expensive to get them back into housing. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any last comments on housing and unhoused? Okay, we'll move on to the last one, which is the community communication and community engagement. I feel like we said a lot of that kind of laid, and perfectly fine. No, that's perfectly fine, Councilman Edwards. But is there anything that else we would add in terms of transparency, any type of communication, and also education? Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, thank you. I like the idea that was brought up tonight. I know we do send out notifications when there's special things coming up, special projects, those sorts of things. If you sign up on Notify Me on our website. However, I love the idea of having some little bullet point, like maybe, you know, upcoming items. Here's what's coming up, and then, you know, maybe just something like that. Not just on our website, but maybe on, you know, again, I hate to task anyone with doing this, but maybe even putting that same thing on like our socials and that sort of thing, just to try to improve engagement. And I don't know if we can do the opposite end too, like once we've completed a council meeting, you know, letting people know, oh, this passed or something. I don't know how that looks, but I think something like that would be cool. I've noticed that other cities will do that, and often it's their council members that put it out, which, you know, I can put that on my own shoulders. But I think it's really great when I see on, you know, like social media and stuff, and there's just a graphic with main items coming up and then the results of that meeting. So just something to throw out there in that, and we did hear it tonight. And so others are thinking about that as well. But I do think it all comes back to, it seems like everything we have said tonight comes back to communication and how do we better engage our community. And again, I'll keep saying this till I'm blue in the face. I think we can always improve in anything that we do, right? So if our community is telling us they'd like for us to improve in our communication, then let's do what we can to do that. So
can we look into the equipment too for communication for the vets hall? Did we already talk about that with the vets hall?
We have not, but I think someone did bring it up. to
Yeah, the
that
communication
point.
equipment for AGP, that would help. And let's see. Oh, can I go back to housing?
Yes, you may.
Okay. I wanted to also see if we could pin down more of, people brought up what kinds of housing that we need. And with our housing, especially with multi-housing, if we do that, if we restrict it with, you know, I don't know, it needs to be better defined what kind of housing, what the, you know, low income, very low income, you know, a different percentage for each type maybe. And yeah, I wanted to add that and deed restrict that.
Okay, thank you.
If we can look into doing that. And yeah, thanks.
So that was for housing.
That was for how, sorry, I jumped around.
No,
there.
that's fair. We just went back to housing for a moment to capture another thought.
Yes. thank
But we're going to move forward to communication and community engagement.
I'll throw
Yes,
out,
please do.
I'll throw down. I know that past, present, and future council members, all of us have different ways of engaging in the community. I think it's important We find our own individual way that best works for us, but office hours are important. Newsletters are important. I know Councilmember Edwards has talked about and worked in some community pods, doing different groups in the area. And then as mentioned tonight, public study sessions on large projects. It's actually something that has been discussed before we took office at a specific projects like the downtown area with the Heights, but we also directed at a council meeting a few months ago for staff to bring back a workshop that allowed public council participation to go over all those large projects that because it's so convoluted. So I think that, that's on the planning list. I'm not sure where, it's something we'll check in with, but we are making those efforts. Because if you don't give the information, then people just have misinformation. And with these large industrial projects before us, we can only share so much information with each other. So it makes it hard for us to share that out publicly. So that'll help a lot, I think. That'll help a lot.
Thank you.
If I may add to what the mayor is
Absolutely.
saying, while I was at the planning conference, another thing that was really interesting was being there. It was just Council Landrum and I, and then we were sitting at tables with multiple planning commissioners with their staff, and it was just amazing how they just had such great relationships. And so I was almost jealous. I told them, I said, that's so interesting that to see that type of relationship with their advisory board. So I don't know where that fits into it, but I think it'd be smart for us on the study sessions. In fact, most cities do that quite often when it comes to development. So obviously not when a certain project's up on the table, but ahead of time, so.
Councilmember Ford?
I'd like to add one more item, and I don't know if it would falls under this category. I think it falls under a couple of categories, but on the subject of the Vets Hall, that's already been brought up a few times tonight, and talking about improving the system, the power grid and all that stuff that's happening there that's going down. I'm wondering if we could really look at the Vets Hall and see if we can truly improve that facility. It's been pretty run down and neglected over the years. I know it takes a little bit of money to put into it. I don't know if that's a high priority, but I do think it is a priority for our city because it's where we gather and it's where we conduct our city business. We want it to be welcoming. We want it to function, and we need for it to operate. We need for us to have roofs that aren't falling through. We need to have, it just needs to be functional and better. And I think we could do better as a city. So I would really like to look at that facility, and, maybe staff could come back to us with some ideas as to how to improve that facility and how much it would cost for the basics to do so, above and beyond just the power issue, and improvement for AGP. So I just want to throw that out there, that I think, especially if we're talking about having gatherings with the community and all these sorts of things, if we're not always able to use this facility, I think we really need to have a better place for all of us to gather as a community and come together to make important decisions for our city. So.
Thank you. Councilmember
If I may
Edwards?
add to that, Councilmember Ford, when I was talking about the property portfolio and taking a look at that, I probably should have been more specific to say, are they something we want to hold on to? Meaning we want to have them, we can maximize them through revenue stream. Are they something that we just need to cut loose and sell? And maybe that is to a housing developer, and maybe that works out. Or is it something that, we need to look at rent? So fixing up all of those things, once we look at them, I think that's where we're going to find the money. That's what my thought is.
Mayor Wixom, do you have any
No, I
thoughts,
was just
anything to
looking
add?
to Laurel and to Councilmember Burton and Landrum for the communication. Hear anything down there?
I would like to throw out there, I think this is communication with the advisory boards. What my feeling is, I'm the liaison for the Harbor Advisory Board, and I feel, my impression is that they feel like they're not, and I don't think it's just unique to the Harbor Advisory Board. I've heard that the different boards have felt this too, but that they are not, they're not being communicated. What they're doing is not being communicated to the public, and also it's not being, they feel like they don't have any purpose really. Like they have all this, this willingness and desire, and they don't feel utilized. I guess that's the word. I'm not saying this very well, but if we could somehow, I don't know how to do it, but fine tune it more. Help me out here, Cindy.
Councilmember
I think Councilmember Landrum, I think it's going to come back to building those relationships. And a lot of that's going to be, I think, on our part. But I do think it's going to be a lot of that, and staff, of course. And I think those study sessions, once we start getting into those, and some joint meetings before we start getting ahead of ourselves in the development side, I think that's going to really help. Yeah.
And I would share, when I served on council before, we did have joint committee
we just haven't
meetings.
had 'em.
So I think re-engaging, because there are so many crossovers where Public Works may be looking at something that Harbor's going to be doing in infrastructure, or CFAC may be looking at some funding for a project. So there is opportunities for them to collaborate and help staff maybe ease the load a bit. But I think re-engaging them, and that was very
I love
heard
that.
too, that there
Yeah.
was a disconnect. They felt underutilized. So I think we need to just kind of work with staff and find a way to bring back some balance so that it works for staff and works for the advisory boards.
Okay, I love that.
But that is our front line of communication for the public too.
Councilmember Ford.
I hate to do this, but can I go to back to another?
Yes, you may.
I'm sorry, everyone. Really quickly, I forgot to mention, and our past mayor did mention the Fill the Gap program with our CBDG, is that the right acronym? Okay, funds to fill gaps in sidewalks. And I'm just curious if that was if we're still doing it, and if we aren't, why aren't we doing it? And if it was beneficial, and if that's something we could revisit when it comes to, to that. I don't know if this is the appropriate time for that, but I do think that that's something maybe worth looking at. We still do it. Got it. Well, then there you go. Never mind,
Still
strike
happening.
that.
Nicely done.
Taken care of. All right.
So anything else on these 4 particular goals and the plethora of ideas and action items that you shared that you want to elaborate on?
Okay. Are we kind of like brainstorming? Is that what we're doing right now?
This has turned into a straight
Yeah,
brainstorming
just
activity, which is completely fine because there's such
Ah.
newness in the
Yeah.
city as a whole. I think the most important thing is that we gather information from, what we heard from a large group of the population. So this agenda, or this PowerPoint kind of went out the window when this public showed up. So I'll be honest with you. But the reality is that the most important thing is that we understand, and I'll turn it over to staff here in a moment, is that we understand what we're hearing from several data points to confirm the things that we kind of have a frame of reference. By which the staff and myself and the interim city manager are working on tomorrow to put something forth that will help solidify this all together. So it is what it is, and that's why we just go with it. So with the mayor's approval, we're going to probably, this is not happening, so I don't even know why I'm holding it. But that being said, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then we'll transition.
Okay, well, I'm just thinking that overall, it seems like there's so many, okay, I'll give you just an example that Mr. Kwolek and I had a conversation about. Someone in the community brought it to my attention that, they were complaining about the street sweeping in Morro Bay. And it turns out that there's different types of street sweeping. And I don't know if it's required that we have street sweeping, like for the Bay, or I don't know anything about that. But it came out that the whole city, all the streets get swept once a year. I think it would probably be the majority of the streets get done once a year. And so something like that, it's a little thing, but I'm just using it as an example. It gets done once a year. What does that do? Like, does that really solve anyone's problem? I mean, for most of the streets don't even have curbs, so it's just streets sweeping the dirt into people's driveway. I mean, it just seems like a waste of money. And then the cars are parked and there's no recourse. So the street sweeper just goes around the car. So there's all kinds of problems with that. And I'm using it as an example to show that maybe we could look at things that we do that maybe aren't necessary or aren't efficient anymore, and try to have more efficiency and save money in different ways, and use that money in ways that we need to in more immediately, and kind of, yeah. So I hope you don't mind I use that as an example.
So
So Jeanette, I think one challenge we're going to have, and we'll probably talk about this tomorrow, is, and I'm just going to make up the numbers for a moment. If staff develops 50 action items to reflect what we heard tonight, we're going to need to come to council and say, council, pick the 30 top ones, right? Because we're not going to be able to do all 50. And we need to know what the priorities are. So I'm just trying to set expectations. I think we're going to have to come back to council with a longer list and ask them to probably pare it down.
I would agree with you. And that was the carry through and the various other things that was a preparation. I believe that there was some, the 28th, it was half hybrid, in person, a variety of different things. So, with that being said, I think it's important that we work together with staff to say what is existing and what can we do based on what we heard today from public and from council, and not come back with 50, but come back with a very short list by which managing the expectations of both, council and community in what we can do based on the constraints of the budget, the constraints of the staff, and so on and so forth. So I believe that list doesn't mean that there's not a table of things that are important, or how do we do a work plan to think about the future today? So to that point, I absolutely agree with you.
So there's the capacity piece, but also do at least 3 of the 5 council members support each of these items. So we
Sure.
need to hear that as well.
Fair. Councilmember Edwards, were you going to say something?
Yeah, it's just my observation tonight, hearing the 5 of us and the public, that I think I'm hearing more like we just need to hear presentations. We just need to hear more about things. And so when I'm asking for, the property portfolio, or what is code enforcement doing, I think it's just, a few steps back right now just to learn a couple things so that we can really get to those action items, is what I'm hearing by us all saying what we were saying tonight. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
But it puts us in
I know.
a crossroads of thinking about how do we come up with those as a council in an open session, be able to think about these 4 goals. And if we were to say, these are the top strategic priorities for that, what would we land on?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'd like to do is take an opportunity to take a quick break, set up an opportunity for you to think about. If you have 3, you get each of you, let's say, each of you get 1 for each of the 4 items.
Mhm.
And you might partner and say that there might be more, like there might be a whole bunch of you that has 1. So then we can have a total, but the total that you can have on there is 4. 4
Okay.
for each of the 4.
Yes.
Does that make sense? And so you can collaborate, and it'll be up here, a visual for people to see, but if you'll give me 5 minutes to set it up. So if we could take a quick 5 minutes and then come back and do that. that fair? Okay, 5 minutes on the clock.
All right, folks, we're going to get back to our next round here, and I will turn it over to Jeanette. Thank you.
Okay, so we are the last lap. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for those that are with us, either in person or Zoom. The last exercise, there's two parts to it. The first is going to be for council. You each have a colored sticky by which you are going to think, I want you to think about strategically what item or what like a very small cluster, for the example of like streets. Are you talking about street paving? Or are you talking about the infrastructure of streets / storms? Kind of like, what is it? Very strategic nature, meaning that it's something we can start to work on and get progress within the next 2 years, by which it's bringing a whole bunch of these action items that I heard quite frequently, roll it up into a very strategic objective. So we have goals and then we have objectives. The objectives is what we're going to agree on, how we're going to go about doing it. So staff has clear direction about how to make an action plan or a work plan based on that. So you get one sticky for each of the 4 goals. When you're done with that, there's going to be 5 stickies because there's 5 of you. And then we have to roll that up into 3. Does that make sense? So when we're done, staff can ask if there's any clarifying questions. They can see what you all are working on, and anyone that's here can ask any clarity around what you're writing or what your thoughts are when we get those 3 for each one solidified. And then therefore we will have a total of 12 to work through tomorrow as a staff, not 30 something. Okay. Does that make sense on the instructions of what to do? Okay. So when you're ready, you can write what you think, what you want for each one of those, and then place it up on the appropriate Post-it. Greg, do you have a question or thought? Okay. Go for it. You're on Jeopardy. If anybody has music, go for it. I'm not singing.
I can play it on my phone.
You can play it on your phone. So one sticky for each of them. So make sure that no dissertations required.
Because they were very good communicators. Or was it like that before? Did they listen before? Oh, no. City council.
Okay, I want to bring our attention to the fact that all of the council members were able to put their thoughts on each one of these 4 goals. And one that we have a clear 1, 2, 3 is in fact public infrastructure that really focuses on first and foremost like a staff report, kind of telling us about the infrastructure, roads, what do we have? So kind of being able to report out, which I believe we already have that and to somewhat has been shared, but we can solidify that. So therefore we can prioritize what we want to do with roads. And what includes that is the street, sidewalk, storm drains, and then also the storm drain condition assessment. So there's one list of a priority that we can do under public infrastructure. The second is repair, update, and enhance the vet hall to continue to serve the community, especially since that point of another goal, how do we communicate? Where do we all come together? How do we have the right infrastructure so that way we're not eliminating anyone who can't join us in person, is able to put their stuff, on a thumb drive, all that good stuff. And then striping program. So that is the 3 that would be objectives under this. Great question. So striping program, yes, Councilmember Edwards.
This is a funny thing of Scott Collins leaving us, but the one thing he told me when I asked him about the streets, I said, what's something that we can do and do easily? And he said, paint's cheap, Cindy. So it just stuck in my head, whether that's true or not. I do notice specifically in the area that I walk around and I think about our seniors in this community, and some of the crosswalks are faded. The red and the disabled parking, all of them are very faded. So I think it's low-hanging fruit.
And to that point, these objectives, once we complete them, we can add more objectives. There's a process by which, and I believe the gentleman's name was Tom, sometimes goals are so big or so audacious that we get kind of paralysis by analysis in the goal and the objective. So these being that there's a list of things that we can continue to show up here that council as a collective is going to have to be thinking about, and staff can bring that back about other items as to come up here. Can be a way of moving the needle and being able to get progress. That was one of the consistent themes through I've heard from this council is we want to see progress. We want to be able to show some of the work that we're doing, the action we want to do. The one that we have not a clear path is fiscal sustainability and economic vitality. Up here we have redevelopment. This is the lights, maintenance, lights, and industrial, and grants. So those are 2 kind of different things on one. Streamline permit process, explore the cost of outsourcing and consulting in-house. This one is improve economic vitality through encouraging existing businesses to stay open later, new businesses to focus on nightlight and entertainment activities rather. So that's another one. And then this one being review our property portfolio to determine if we are maximizing them. And then also as a second grant. So I see grant writing as a potential goal, or I'm sorry, objective. But then there's a little bit of not clarity in terms of what the council all agrees on. So if you were to look at these, where would we see that we get the best direction for staff to be able to say, these are the 3 things we want you to work on for this one? Councilmember Edwards.
To me, I know it's the one that I put up there, but if you're taking a look at your property portfolio, we can then determine if we are leveraging them enough. Is it a property that we need to cut loose and sell? Is it a property that we need to look at a higher rent on? Is it something, I mean, I'm talking about all of our buildings and all of our empty lots. So I just think that might be something, if we were to take a look at all that, we'd know where we stand.
That could also fall under housing potential for housing projects too, when you talk about city property. in the
Sure.
Portfolio, so it could actually go into housing also, so that's one of those that can cross over.
Okay.
Because you're looking at economic value, but you're also, that also can feed into housing opportunities, right?
Would you be comfortable if we put it under housing?
Well, I would,
Just looking at it as a enhancement.
I am, I'm looking at it, our financial sustainability, if we're not. So for me, this is kind of where I came to it. If during campaigning, Measure B22 didn't pass, right? If we have measures that come and the public has said enough is enough, and they don't want to put any money toward maintenance of things, for example. We have buildings that are not, Betts Hall's not, the power's not working there. We have crumbling facilities. So I was saying within that, we're taking a look at the Betts Hall, we're taking a look at the community center, right? So I was talking about all of the elements of those buildings. So not just housing. I'm not sure what properties per se, I don't know how many of them would be housing properties, so.
Okay. Is there anything that stands out in particular that's going to bring in the fiscal sustainability and economic vitality? If we think about this from these two, what are some of the things that would help bring in money and give fiscal sustainability? So grant writing, I see that twice. Okay, so we have one, we can put grant. Okay. Another is streamlining the permit process. The other is the downtown businesses to encourage nightlife. The development of lights.
On the streamlining the permitting process, are we talking, I'm assuming we're talking commercial, are we talking residential, are we talking both? I mean, I think maybe we should be more specific there.
Okay, so that was mine.
Yes,
And so great questions. So over and over again, I hear from both ends of things that there, and let me back up even further. When I was on Planning Commission, we agreed to have a subcommittee formed. It was ad hoc or subcommittee. I don't remember what it was. Scott, you can, I'm sorry, Mr. Graham, you can correct me on whatever it was that we formed, or we wanted to form. But anyway, to really look at the process, the permitting process, and involving those who've gone through it and getting feedback from individuals, developers who have been affected by that process, and learning from them, and so just overall, I think that I don't think that we're doing anything horrible, but I think that we can improve so that we can entice developers to look at a properties, as well as anyone who wants to develop a property. Sorry, I set off our friend over there. But anyone who wants to, I think that right now, and even though we've made major improvements over the years, now we have the ability to submit plans online, which we didn't have. I mean, we had a really old system. I mean, just that part was a huge improvement for our city. And I think that over time, we can improve it even more so that that process is more enticing to people who want to do something in our city, as well as attracting others who would like to do something for our city. And that could benefit us with housing development. It could benefit us with business development. All of that comes together and creates economic vitality, if you ask me. So I just would like to see our planning department and our maybe our planning commission, that subcommittee. I hope that maybe they could come back with some improvements and that we could put into action. Maybe I don't know. So that's where that background came from.
Are there questions or any thoughts?
Short-term vacation rental
we're in a recession, maybe,
Mhm.
maybe it's a good idea to raise the short-term vacation rental fees, you know, maybe we could look at that. Could we add that to your?
I mean,
You can add a lot. and so
yeah, I mean,
that-
you
so
could
that's
expand,
where- Yeah.
you could, I mean, I think first and foremost, I really would like to see what staff comes back with how, if ways, if it's possible and how that can happen.
Mhm.
And then, you know, if we want to tack on more to that process, you know, a review of our permits.
I'm just not clear how that helps with economic vitality.
Okay, well, I think that if we are no longer thought as a city as being a hard city to develop in, or if, let's even say it's a property that somebody wants to renovate, you know, and then they have to go through that permitting process. We are improving our reputation over time. I know our staff is working really hard to improve our reputation, but we've had a reputation of being a hard place to develop. And so I would love to see how we could streamline that process. If we are already doing it, great. But I'd like for staff to come back maybe with some way of streamlining it with our help. You know, if there's something that we could do to help them, to help us.
If I may,
It's pro-business. It makes it
It's
pro-business.
pro-business, it's pro,
Pro-business if we, for residential and commercial.
Well, that's what I was trying to say, could we add, because I think it's really hard to get business licenses too, and maybe we could look at making simple, well, that's what I was asking. Yeah, can we like simplify?
it would be,
well,
Okay.
okay, so if I could get consensus from council, I'm willing to broaden it slightly and see what we come back with for actual items from our staff. I'm okay with broadening that and, you know, and with what's achievable. And, you know, if staff comes back with a plan that we think that's workable and that we can all encompass all of those things, I guess we could expand it.
So are we going to put this as one of our?
Permits in general, I guess.
Permits in
I don't
general?
know.
Okay.
Sure.
Permits in
Is
general.
that what it said? I thought it said-
It's streamline
It's-
the
it's-
permit process.
For me, it's the process of from start to finish. And I think that's really where we went with Planning Commission a while ago. It was like 2 years ago, I think it was. And Mr. Graham, please correct me if you guys have already met and this is already in process, then.
It's one of the ones it was one of the ones from the previous goal sessions that we did not get to. Mostly because the zoning code was ongoing and the implementation of city works and stuff was ongoing. So it didn't make a lot of sense to do it in the middle. But
Yeah.
it does make a lot of sense now because we're done with those initiatives. And that's taking a look at the rest of the stuff, at least on the like development side of things. Business licenses aren't that, but we can look at that too.
Okay. So, yeah.
So it sounds like that's going to be a number 2. So grant writing was one of the top 3. And then the second one being the streamlining process.
I don't know if I have support from others, but.
may I add something?
You may.
I was just thinking in terms of housing, also affordable housing, we're looking at housing, right? So this is about streamlining the permitting and processing of everything, if you put it in a broad way. Councilmember Landrum, I don't know if that helps.
Oh,
That's, I think, where Councilmember Ford is
Oh,
speaking to.
I mean, yeah, because it doesn't say that kind of would go with housing too. So I don't know how, I'm just a little
Yes.
unclear on.
So a lot of these items kind of fall under all the categories. They're all, to me, they're intersectional. I think each of them rely on one or more of the other categories. I think this one could fit under housing. It could fit under, you know, so I think that, I think that if we could streamline this process, it doesn't, and I know it kind of sounds, if people are afraid of development, it's not necessarily to like bring in some huge developers to completely change the landscape of Morro Bay, but it's even the people that are our locals that are trying to renovate a space they already own or lease, and just streamlining that process to make it easier for our residents that are here already, as well as newcomers. So I think overall we can improve the process, and I would love to assist staff with making it a priority so that they can get the resources that they need and put that emphasis on that to improve that process and by prioritizing it.
I mean,
Any thoughts? If we want it there.
I understand.
Number two.
Number
Good.
two? Okay, so this one being that it's also talking about the downtown area, I can't help but think that it's going to be part of this streamline process. So I'm going to dovetail that together under here because I think
What
it
is
does.
that one?
This is talking about like just understanding or being able to encourage businesses to stay open later in the downtown area. New businesses focus on nighttime activities and add more lighting. So the process of maybe bringing businesses and maybe zoning, I don't know if that's a zoning ordinance about timing or various things. Is it something to look at, or is that separate?
We probably don't tell businesses when they have to close. Just the question is, the lighting piece might be.
Councilmember Barton, to clarify what you were saying, are you trying, when you were mentioning staying open late, it wouldn't necessarily be telling businesses, hey, you need to stay open late. It's more of attracting businesses that would offer a nightlife also. To expand on that a little bit, I did get some feedback recently from one of our business owners who has mentioned that they've had many families, local families, come into their business and have mentioned there's not a lot for them to do once it gets dark. And not just nightlife like bars and that kind of thing, but I mean families in general. And there's always a joke, right, that we roll up the sidewalks as soon as it gets dark here in Morro Bay. And so this business owner mentioned over and over, he gets on a regular basis locals that come in and talk about that, and that they would love to see not necessarily a super late 2 a.m. crazy crowd kind of thing, but just more of a nightlife. So I agree with you, and I don't know where that fits in over here, like what category it would be under, but I hear what you're saying. I just wanted to make that point. So does that fall under? It probably would fall under that same category because it deals with development and the process of, if we can streamline the permitting process, could we entice new businesses to come in during that process or after that process? Maybe. Is that a,
If I may add.
Yes, yes.
I think she just got it. It's about being able to pursue and get new business to town that can provide and offer those amenities. So, I mean, that's, is that what you're saying? Councilmember Barton? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but yeah, just making sure I got the
So the
concept.
3 things that are kind of is the review of property portfolio to determine if we can maximize them. The next is explore the cost of outsourcing, and have we done that? Is that a study that's already in place?
We did one a while ago, yes. Right? Wasn't it, Dana, what was it, by something, who's it by?
A study
Management
regarding-
Partners?
Oh.
Yeah, Management Partners study from several years ago looked at that. So sure we could dust it off and present it to council if you want to look at it.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay, and then so this is something that we can take away right away and do action on. And then this is development. This is the light maintenance, light industrial. Is this in particular? What can you elaborate more on this
That
one?
was where I was looking at the Quintana redevelopment, and development of the business districts that are existing, but enhancing those. And that would fall probably in with the permitting process actually, because, well, not just there, but, in part,
It would suit the need of what you think
I mean,
is a
it could also
priority.
fall with housing if you were to
Sure.
encourage them to redevelop and add, housing on the second floor or third floor.
Does anybody have any opposition to the review of property portfolio? Because at this point, we have everything covered, and this would be our third one. You want to do it anyways? Greg's checking it off.
Thank
Okay,
you,
Number 3.
Samantha.
And then this is a return because we have something that we could present to council in terms of a study that's been done, internal versus
Well, and I think
consultant.
This will also feed into community engagement
Mm-hmm.
because I'm sure the community doesn't know half of the properties that the city actually owns.
Well, that's perfect because we only have 2 on this one. So perhaps maybe this allows us to go into this. So this fell into when it came to community, the communication and community engagement. This was pretty clear that the council is aligned on terms of combined meetings with advisory board and council, as well as periodic meetings with advisory boards and council. Improved purpose of the community boards so we can attract and keep good commissioners. One there. And then the second one is community workshops. This one, advisory boards there. Build relationships with advisory boards, that's there. And then study sessions on upcoming development. Any thoughts or anything that you would add to community, to communication and community engagement? Going.
We can add stuff?
Yeah. This you have an open slot, but you don't have to because, like I said, it's not a requirement. But if there is something that has not been addressed, then I want to make sure this is the opportunity to address it.
I think it's pretty broad.
Pretty broad in that it captures everything that that was been kind of that's been said.
The only thing I might say is I heard a lot tonight about the website and what was the other comment about Councilmember Ford about the bullet points that you brought up? Bullet points on the agenda.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a possibility. We can have staff come back and let us know if that's something we can do.
So it was just putting bullet points on it. It's a refinement.
So I think that was, but that was where it was posted. So it comes back to our social media outreach, probably. Facebook, the city page, hot topics, all that.
Yeah, and if you look at that survey, the survey results that came in from the community survey, a majority of the people get their information about the city on social media. By far, it was pretty dramatic. So I think that we need to look at the social media aspect of it.
Because that is a huge engagement and it's challenging for staff, so.
Say,
Sorry about that. Thank you. We're having our own conversation.
Sorry.
No, I think that fits in there where you talk about the bullet points, where you talk about the hot topics and all those things. So it would be our social media outreach with the community engagement. How can we enhance it? And that task has been taken on by the city clerk and assistant city clerk and the city manager that was here before. So
they're going to love that.
it
Thank
adds
you.
to their workload already. So they're doing the best they can to manage it right
Okay.
now. Yeah. But there may be other ways we can address
Sure.
it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because I don't know that it's a lot of work. It's a part-time job, really.
Yeah.
So maybe we're looking at a broader, like a part-time position for communications or an intern or something that would be, because, yeah,
And maybe it's structured too, because all the departments also all weigh in onto those. They either have their own page or, with the city. So it's very elaborate.
Okay. So at the end of the day, what we're saying is we don't want to overburden our clerks.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to put that out there, but it would be great to improve our social media presence if we can.
Thank you. So we are moving on. Home stretch, housing and unhoused. So truly affordable, low income housing. So identify low income opportunities for housing. And then we have, that's one that there seems to be 2 of the 3. So if there's any pushback from, or not pushback, but any resistance on, looking at affordable low income housing, anyone who didn't put that as an option, have any opposition to that? No. Okay. Then the 3 that are kind of on their own is one is an ad hoc design committee for downtown. Another is speed up process of ADU permits. I feel like this goes back to permits in general, but perhaps maybe I'm wrong. ADU permits to increase availability for affordable housing. And then this is the 3rd one, bring the zoning downtown back to 30 feet. So out of these, where do we? Yes, go
So
for it.
2 of those are, sorry, two of those are already items coming back in to council that are discussion for a downtown design district, and there's already direction to form a group. So, and I think that the other feeds into the permitting process, feeding up the permit for the ADUs that would feed into the housing or the residential and business permitting.
So you said the two that are up for council to discuss is the 30 feet and the ad hoc design committee? Okay. So then under housing, we really only have, that truly low income housing. Are there things that you heard tonight that could be priorities that you want to put here? Yes.
So was
Councilor
that
May.
also including our homeless, our unhoused? So we didn't address that really.
Yeah,
under that
yeah, there's
category.
nothing on unhoused here.
So I think, for me, I would want to work on expansion of some of those items that were brought up for our unhoused. Pardon? For the, like the emergency shelter opportunities and safe parking and some of that conversation to be continued, what our options are.
If I might add to that,
Yes,
Mayor,
please do.
do you think that probably grant opportunities might fall in to that as well? If we had a grant writer?
Mayor Wixom, do you mean, is that like the study session that we were talking about? Is that what you're referring to, or?
It can be however you want to frame it.
With the
I
police
just
department
didn't
and-
see that
yeah,
up
yeah.
there
Okay.
Included. I think it's too important for us to not include on that.
Okay. So options for housing is, for the unhoused rather, is the second. And then do we have a third that we want to include in here?
Do we need to, would it be good to prioritize that we work, that we prioritize working with our regional, the strategic plan within our region, that we participate in that process, or is that just a given? Do we need to prioritize that?
That's part of that.
That is part of that specific ask? Okay, I mean, if it is, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that that it is a priority.
So can you repeat that? What was that priority you're speaking to?
To continue to, to continue to work within our region to implement what is it, a 5-year strategic plan?
The county 5-year.
Yeah, the county's strategic plan for 5 years. Yeah, so making sure that we are working with our partners. Yeah,
To explore all options, I think,
yeah.
Okay.
all housing options.
Okay, so that falls under the second one for just looking for options for unhousing, correct? Or unhoused
Mhm.
rather. Are there anything else that we would want to add to this one as a objective for housing and unhoused?
I think identifying perhaps opportunities, locations and opportunities for housing projects. I know we have very limited opportunities, but we have been able to, before the one we're doing right now, we have a senior project over on Main Street and some others, but there might be potential. So exploring that potential for other, Haslow, whatever type of group cluster housing, affordable housing, low income housing options. I don't know how council feels about that.
The low income is kind of addressed in identifying the opportunities for that. So that was the first one. Second one is options or, looking for options, exploring options for the unhoused. And then we don't have to have a third. We can have it later as we continue to evolve. Yes.
Can we look into how short-term vacation rentals affect our housing, like rental stock? Can we look into that? Would anyone agree to that?
I know right now that Visit SoCal is having a survey conducted or a study conducted for that regionally. So I don't know, I hear what you're saying, because I've had that same concern. And so I'm wondering if we pull our resources for that, or if we let them conduct the study and then kind of go from there and reassess.
Are we being included? I don't know if we're being included in that study.
wish Michael was still here. I think we are included. I believe it's the whole region. You don't think so?
I haven't heard. Maybe Mr. Graham knows.
My understanding is they will be contacting us, is my understanding.
Yeah, and that's the general idea that the last that I had heard when we had our biannual meeting is that it would be the whole, the region in general, so which includes all of SLO County.
So we can check on that and report back. Councilmember Edwards?
If I may add two things. One, if we take a look at our properties, which Greg already said we're going to, which makes me happy, we will identify the ones that could be used in that way. And then when I mentioned earlier about having a presentation of the catalyst sites, we have that information in Plan MB. Maybe that's something we could take a look at.
Maybe we just leave it at the 2.
Yeah, we can leave it at the 2 and then revisit as needed.
You do have a couple of other continued housing items as well. You have the Seashell Estates
Right.
land use amendment and some other housing element program implementation.
Perfect.
There's a lot.
Great. Okay, if for staff, that's probably exhausted and everybody is at this point. Are there any questions or thoughts about what you heard and any clarification that would be helpful while we're top of mind? Yes, Councilmember Ford.
Okay, so I guess I'm asking for clarification because there's a couple of items that didn't make it up there, and I'm afraid that they're going that if this is all that we are going to address, that it will get left out. And two of those items are the paid parking, and then the second is waterfront master plan. And so I don't know if we're allowed to add any more to the list, but I really want to advocate for us to not leave those off if possible, to be considered, to be brought back.
The parking study's already going on.
It's already
Yeah,
done.
so-
Sorry, to implement paid parking.
I don't talk.
Do we need to, do we not need to prioritize
I
that?
don't think it's a goal, though. I think it's just something that needs to come back to council. Is that correct? Is that?
We were recommending that it carry over from the previous plan.
Okay, great. Okay, that's good. Okay.
But you brought up a second one, Councilmember
The
Ford.
waterfront master plan. Thank you for clarifying that. I didn't even think about the fact that that would be an ongoing project.
So the waterfront master plan, we want to rewrite it or we
It's been a long time. To revisit.
I don't think I disagree. I just don't know if we can bite that off next year. Or not. Right.
I think we can frame something and bring it back to you because there's opportunities there. We need to look for grant funding to do it. There is grant funding available just based on resiliency and climate adaptation that's out there. So that is an opportunity. And we probably could form something and bring it back to you when we condense this into.
So we start working on the funding.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's what we would do.
So should we, instead of just generalizing, maybe it's a waterfront master plan funding? Would that be the prior? Does it matter? Do we need to specify? Just keep it general?
No, yeah, we can.
Yeah. With research funding for the waterfront master plan. I think.
Step 1.
Microphones, turn your mic on.
I give mine.
We have to turn our mics
Okay.
on if we're going to talk, so that way that they can hear us back there. Okay. Anything, staff, any questions, thoughts that you have for clarification about anything that you heard that would help solidify how the carryover and all the various data points you have in your head, data points that you see up here can solidify what we put before council?
The finance director, maybe?
Going once.
Can I ask if the striping program, does that include the side, like the sidewalks that are painted red and green and stuff like that? Okay. And then to go with parking with those sidewalks, I understand the green parking is a limited parking. Can we look into enforcing that? And maybe there's some kind, if we enforce the 20-minute parking or 30-minute parking, whatever it is, can we, will there be revenue from that if people get tickets? You know, but that's one way to address the parking. And that's easy and quick if we're already doing the striping.
I'll have to ask that for a broader question, and perhaps, Scott, you can address that in terms of like, the parking being the green, like we're restriping and we're painting things of various colors. If we're painting green, that says you have a 20-minute parking. Is there a way that that's enforced? But yeah.
We don't, certainly we don't enforce it now. And so that could be a conversation for council to have. We could identify the locations where there are green curved areas, because most of the areas where they are, we've taken the signs down, but not all of them. And I don't believe that we've repainted any of our green curves for the last, I don't know, since I've been here. I've been here for 8 years. So that program was discontinued at least 8 to 10 years ago, probably further back than that.
Well, even if it stays discontinued, something should be done because they're.
And I think I said if it's the council's desire, we could certainly do that piece that I talked about. We could identify where it's at, and we could have the conversation about what it would take to actually enforce parking in those areas, because we don't have staff to do that currently.
Could that be incorporated at all in the process? I know that we have talked about with the paid parking, the enforcement for that, how it pays for the enforcement. Could that go all the way? Could that enforcement be utilized in other areas of our city, or would that, like, you know what I mean? Could it be a twofer, 2 for 1? Can we use that enforcement further than beyond the paid parking area? Like,
Potentially you could, yes.
okay.
Yeah, it just, if we put the program down on the waterfront, it's going to require a coastal development permit, and they're going to require us to spend the revenues from that, meaning the coastal commission, require us to spend the revenues from that in that area.
Okay.
So it becomes a little problematic moving it up the hill. You know, we'd have to look at, get creative, I guess, if we were going to do that.
I would add to the conversation that paid parking is typically enforced, for obvious reasons, because there's a loss of revenue and loss of circulation if it's not enforced. But things like green curb are complaint driven, and I'm sure that, if someone is parked in a 2-hour zone and there's a complaint about it, it's followed up on. But I don't know about the cost effectiveness of having some kind of monitoring program for unpaid parking areas. I just throw that out there.
Has it been looked at?
Not since I've been here.
All
right.
Anything from any staff, any input from staff? Are you all digesting to come back later? I keep looking at our finance director down there as.
Well, I think that the next steps after we bring some next iteration back to you on April 11th would be incorporating some of those action items into budget development where applicable. And then we would have an opportunity, if needed, to seek additional input regarding the funding for some of those items at your budget study sessions in May.
So to that point, are there any other thoughts or questions regarding the goals, the objectives that we've laid out? Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, I have a question. It goes back to the prioritization. Is there some way in the next meeting during the process? I know we've whittled it down to just a few specific items, but I really think we need to also look at those specific items and then oh my gosh.
It's that time.
Prioritize them as well. After looking at the items that are already in progress, as well as these new items that we're proposing. I don't know if there's some way for staff in their report when they come back to somehow help us with that prioritization. What's doable? I know in the past it's been, we could probably achieve this in a year or 2 years or 6 months or those sorts of things. But also, what's most needed. Like, let's say storm drains are, maybe our staff is like, yeah, that's dire. Or maybe they're like, no, actually, we could go a little bit longer. I would love to see some sort of input on that as well. And I don't know if that's possible for staff to do that in their report. Like, this is urgent. This one's maybe less urgent. However, we hear that you want to do it. So here's the report and this is what we can do. So
We can take a pass at that
Sure.
and recommend immediate items, year two items. And we can show that timing to council and see if you agree.
okay, because I think it would really be helpful for me to, when we're deciding on what actionable items we really want to focus on, to hear what staff, how they feel about it, not just what they can do, but that prioritization. And then I think it would help for them to have direction from us in that prioritization so that they're not tasked with all, say there's 30 items, we're just gonna throw out a number. You got 30 items and you're like, great, we have 30 items, where do we start, right? So I think that if we really itemize and really focus on what's first, get this done, if you can get this done, and then we move on. To me, that's important to help direct staff.
Okay.
So if that's already going to be part of the plan, great. But if not, I just wanted to put that out there, that I think it's important that we have some guidance in which direction we go. One other thing I want to say before we go into the next meeting about goals is a way to measure our actionable items. What are we asking for as a council as far as measurement for these actionable items? Are we asking for regular reports? Are we asking for, how do we present these actionable items to council and to our public, the process that we're going through? Just how do we want that measured, and if these items are measurable, that sort of thing.
So I'm used to reporting at a council meeting, a staff report every quarter on the status of the strategic plan.
Okay, great.
You can do it quarterly, you can do it twice a year.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I have a set plan for that or that I'm asking for one. I'm just wondering if that's something that we would decide in the next meeting, that we would, we'd love for our city manager to come back to us this often with a report, if that's something that we would develop in that process.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Annette, are we done?
You all look
Wrapping
baked.
it up? I want to, a couple shout outs. First of all, thank you all, the staff, for all your input and work on this. I think from all of us, the five of us appreciate it, and I know the community does too. Seeing that survey, I think makes us aware of the challenges we have before us, but there was also the good in it all. And, huge shout out to our public safety departments. It was really nice to see how much the community regards those departments and those services, which is nice because sometimes it's controversial, but yet around here it was really rose to the top. So that was pretty awesome. That was a nice way to set the tone for everything else. And I think, some of the other things when we talk about permitting processes and those things, there's already been steps to move forward. And so I think a lot of those paths are just refining and continuing down them. So I don't think any of it's negative in that sense. I think that there's, these are all the positives in how we move forward. And, the harbor, he's pretty unscathed down there. I think he got off way too easy for being the newbie here. But bigger things to come down there with, capital projects and infrastructure and things that are really challenging down there too. And it all circles back to funding, and funding staff-wise and funding dollar-wise. So thank you all for your efforts. And I think that, we have good things to look forward to, and happy about it.
I just want to show next steps, that what's up coming up in terms, maybe not, in terms of the flow, to kind of going back to Councilmember Ford's point, maybe. No, the last one, very last, my ducks. Okay, there we go. So working on having something by the 11th, which is audacious in and of itself, but totally doable. We'll be working as a team tomorrow. And then you have a budget study session in May, 2 of them. And then there is the budget adoption for at council, and then the quarterly updates of progress to council. But that can be, going back to that point, it can be a variety of different things depending on the actual topic or where we've made progress. We just want to celebrate wins. That is all that I have. I just appreciate the opportunity to keep you even longer than you thought you were going to be here. So thank you. I guess I need to help repay that favor. But I appreciate just being, it's an honor to come up to Morro Bay and to be able to engage both you and your community. I think you're doing all great things and I'm excited to watch it happen. So thank you.
Thank you for leading us in our workshop. With that, we are adjourned.
Nice.